If you've ever struggled with tapering off prednisone, wondering why we even bother tapering at all, this episode is for you. Welcome to the ultimate guide on prednisone tapering. I'm Dr. Megan, a board-certified doctor of pharmacy, third-generation pharmacist, and former prednisone patient. Over the past 7 years, I've created over 1,000 videos about prednisone, answering questions and guiding people like you through the challenges of this medication. Tapering prednisone is one of the trickiest parts of prednisone treatment. You can't just stop cold turkey without serious consequences. That's why I've put together this ultimate guide, featuring some of my best videos about prednisone tapering, all in one place. To make this marathon even more helpful, I've created a free prednisone taper chart that you can download and use and follow along. This chart will help you understand tapering schedules, track your progress, and stay organized to avoid common pitfalls as you taper. You'll find the link to download the chart in the description below, so be sure to grab your copy now. In this ultimate tapering guide marathon, you'll learn why tapering is so important and what happens if you stop prednisone too quickly, how to manage withdrawal symptoms during a taper, tips for creating a safe and effective tapering schedule, no matter your dose, how to avoid the taper trap, and support your adrenal glands along the way. I've also included timestamps in the description so you can jump to the exact part you need. But I encourage you to watch the full video if you can. It's packed with valuable insights and practical tips that will help you taper more safely and confidently. One last thing. Some of these videos are from my earlier days as a video creator. Over the years, I've worked hard to improve the quality of my videos, and I hope you'll forgive any imperfections in the earlier segments. Finally, a disclaimer. Anything I say in these videos, you should be using to help you communicate with your doctor, to work closely with your doctor. Your doctor is the expert in your care, and so you should follow their advice, number one. I'm just here to help you understand the medication better. I do not want you to change your treatment because of something I said here that contradicts what your doctor says. Work closely with your doctor, print off the taper chart, and bring it to him or her so that they can help you find the best taper for you, your condition, and your body. Thank you so much for trusting me as a guide on your journey. Don't forget to print off that taper chart, and let's dive into the world of prednisone tapering. Do you want to know how to taper prednisone? So many people need to know this guidance. And before I dive deeper in precisely how to taper prednisone and show you exactly how to use my printable taper chart, I have to give this disclaimer. First, that nothing I'm about to say contradicts your doctor. Your doctor is the expert in your care, and so you should follow your doctor's advice, and everything you do should be in close communication with your doctor. And you're going to need the prescriptions from your doctor to make this happen. I recommend getting prescriptions for at the minimum 5 and 1 milligram tablets. You could also have 10 or 20 depending on where you start. But no matter what, you've got to start by having a good working relationship with your doctor and communicating exactly how you're feeling, because we need to keep two things in balance. Your disease coming back, whether it's your asthma flaring so you can't breathe, or your joints suddenly having pain, or your shoulders having pain, that has to stay completely stable. And then the other thing is we want to prevent withdrawal syndrome. That means you feel exhausted, maybe like a cold is coming on or something, but you don't have a runny nose, you don't have a cough, but you just feel that yucky, awful feeling. That might be withdrawal syndrome. And so when you're tapering, look out for those two things, your disease coming back and your withdrawal syndrome, okay? If you want to know more about those things, check out my other videos. But what I want to dive deep into is how to taper prednisone using my prednisone taper chart. And you can download this, print it off yourself by clicking the link below, how to taper prednisone. Okay, so now I want to show you my prednisone taper chart. And you need to figure out first what dose you're currently taking. And then there are lots of other considerations that determine how fast you taper. So check out my video all about the things to consider before tapering. And then you can print out the whole taper chart or just the pages that you need for your taper strategy. So I went through the medical literature. I went through my personal experience dispensing prescriptions in the pharmacy. I did as much research I could to find out the most typical prednisone taper strategies. And then I put them in my taper chart printable so that you would know what is most common and some ways to do it. And the way it's organized throughout this document is by shortest to longest duration of taper. And so the first one is what a lot of people can handle. And then as the tapers get more drawn out, less and less people need that kind of a taper, but they need more refined guidance. And so it's more intense and purposeful at that point. So let's start with the most common, easy, simple taper. That's the one I call short-term prednisone 5 weeks taper chart. And this all fits on one page and it's really easy. If you happened to start at 40 milligrams, then you take 40 milligrams every single day for 1 week. And then the next week, you take 30 milligrams every single day for 1 week. Then on week 3, you take 20 milligrams every single day for 1 week. Then on week 4, you take 10 milligrams every day for 1 week. And finally, on week 5, you take 5 milligrams every day for a week. And then at that point, you can simply stop taking prednisone. Watch out for your disease flaring and your withdrawal symptoms. But if you are feeling okay at that point, then you can just stop. That is definitely the most common taper I saw in the pharmacy as a practicing pharmacist. But if that doesn't work for you, because of the many factors I mentioned in my other video about what you need to consider, here is a longer term taper chart. And I'm going to assume that you already got down to 20 milligrams because at 20 milligrams, that's where we often see a lot of people struggle. Sometime around 15 milligrams and then again around 7.5 milligrams are usually spots certain people get stuck at. So this is designed to help you get through those spots, which I call the taper trap. All right, so this taper strategy, instead of dropping from 20 all the way down to 10, which is a 50% drop, we're only going to drop closer range to 10 to 20% each of these drops. Because for a lot of people, it doesn't matter the milligram drop, it matters the percentage drop. So it doesn't matter whether you're dropping 10 milligrams, it's whether you're dropping 10% of the dose. So if we're dropping from 20 down to 17.5, that's closer to 20% than if we were to be dropping from 20 to 10 milligrams, which is a 50% drop. A lot of people just can't handle that humongous drop. So for this taper, we start out at 20 milligrams and do that for a week. Week 2, we go to 17.5 milligrams and hold that for a week. Week 3 is 15 milligrams. Week 4 is 12.5 milligrams. And week 5 is 10 milligrams. So you can see between 20 and 10 milligrams, it took us 5 weeks, and each time we dropped by 2.5 milligrams. You can either be using a 5 milligram tablet and cutting it in half, or you could be using a 10 milligram tablet and cutting it in fourths, or you could have your doctor prescribe you a 2.5 milligram tablet. Those are all ways you could be making this drop, okay? Then at 10 milligrams, things get a lot more refined. We are still wanting to keep our goal of dropping by 10 to 20%. And so at this point, we're dropping by 1 milligram from 10 to 9 instead of from 10 to 7.5. So on week 6, we're going to 9 milligrams. And to get to that, you need either 9 1 milligram tablets or 5 milligram and 4 1 milligram tablets. Okay. So you're holding 9 milligrams for a week, and then you hold 8 milligrams for a week, and then you drop to 7 milligrams for a week, 6 for a week, 5 for a week, 4 for a week, 3 for a week, 2 for a week, and then 1 for a week. And at that point, if you're feeling okay, you can go to 0 and be done. That's so exciting. But if that didn't work for you, I'm sorry, go back to the lowest effective dose where you weren't having your disease flaring or withdrawal symptoms and try my even longer term taper chart. And this is where instead of dropping that many milligrams per week, we're going to drop that many milligrams per month. So instead of it being a 14-week taper chart, it's a 14-month taper chart. And it is dropping much slower. The duration of the drop is 4 times longer. Hopefully that gives your body the chance to make the changes that it needs to be able to handle that kind of a drop. And so this one is published in the scientific literature. It's a thing, and it theoretically helps. but still a lot of people get stuck somewhere, and dropping even 1 milligram can get really uncomfortable. So that's where the next strategy comes from. And this is called the alternate day strategy. And this strategy, not the way I have it in this document, but the strategy of alternate day strategy is actually published in the FDA package insert for prednisone. This is actually approved by the FDA using alternate day dosing. And in that package insert, it talks about going from 5 milligrams to 0 to 5 milligrams to 0 to 5 milligrams to 0, so that every other day you get drug, no drug, drug, no drug, drug, no drug. And the strategy, I think, was to preserve adrenal function. I haven't personally heard of I've heard of very few people who've even tried this, and even fewer who've been successful with it. Most people just can't handle drug, no drug. Like, it causes withdrawal symptoms. It just is so uncomfortable. And so usually that is not going to work. In this case, what I'm proposing is an alternate day strategy where we do one dose and a different dose, not one dose and then a no dose, okay? So we're going to call it old dose and new dose. So we're going to start here at 10 milligrams because that's where people really get struggling with a 1 milligram drop. So we start with 10 milligrams, and then the next day we do 9 milligrams, and then the next day 10 milligrams, and the next day 9 milligrams, 10, 9, 10, 9. And we do that every other day for a week. And then the following week, we hold this new dose of 9 milligrams. The next week, 9 milligrams becomes the old dose and 8 milligrams becomes the new dose. And so we go 9, 8, 9, 8, 9, 8. Every other day, a different dose. Because that's giving us the ability to get closer to 8.5 milligrams, kind of. So that's the idea, is we're alternating every day, old dose, new dose, old dose, new dose. And then the next week, we hold 8 milligrams. And the following week, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7. And the next week, hold 7. And so on, all the way until we get down to 1 milligram. And then at that point, you could either cut it in half and do 1.5, 1.5, and then just hold a half a milligram tablet, or you could go off and go to 0. Those are my best tips for how to taper off prednisone. Just click the link below to download my prednisone taper chart and figure out exactly which one is working for you. And you can just mark it off. And if you don't mark it off, I swear you will forget. I'm a pharmacist. I'll forget these things. Just mark it off every time you are taking the pill so that you know I did it today and I know what dose I took today. Just click the link below to download my printable taper chart so that you can escape the taper trap. I get lots of questions about when do I need to taper? People wonder, my doctor prescribed prednisone for 5 days, 40 milligrams for 5 days, for example. Don't I need to taper off when it's over? I hear you, Dr. Megan, talking about the importance of tapering and that not tapering is one of the, 7 deadly sins of prednisone. But there are a few exceptions for when you don't need to taper. So if you were working in a pharmacy, you would see tons of prescriptions that say 40 milligrams for 5 days, and that's it. That's the entire prescription. There's no tapering involved. Are people okay, though, if they only taper not at all? If they go from 40 down to 0 instantly? And often, if it's a very short-term prescription, people are okay. Most people are okay if they just go off cold turkey for a very short-term prescription. But what exactly does short-term mean? So I'd say for 5 days or less, it's pretty safe to just go off cold turkey. If you're having side effects after a day or two and you're like, can I just stop? Then I'd say, yeah, just stop. But after 5 days, that's when it gets a little more iffy. The cutoff I definitely use is beyond 10 days. If you've been on prednisone or another steroid for 10 days or more, then you need to taper. That's my professional opinion. You need to taper. And what does taper mean? It means you start out at a high dose and you go smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's gone. So for example, you might start at 20 and you would go down to 15, and then you'd go down to 10, and then you'd go down to 5, 2.5, and off. That's an example of a taper. There are lots of ways you can taper prednisone, though, and it's
more of an art than a science. So if you are interested in what taper possibilities there might be, just click the link below and I will have a download where you can get all of the tapering options and a little worksheet that you can fill in. So you don't have to do any thinking. You just, okay, today's this day. All right, I'm going to just follow this tapering plan. Always follow the instructions of your doctor, work closely, let them know what you're doing. But sometimes doctors just say, okay, you can taper off. And you're like, how? What do I do? That's exactly what I created this for. So it is the tapering prednisone plan that I've created that includes all of like the long-term prednisone, the short-term prednisone, the dead slow taper, all of them are included. You could just choose which page works for you and print off that one. So if you want a copy, just click the link below.
Are you looking for help with your adrenals recovering after taking prednisone? I recently had somebody reach out and ask me, I need a recommendation for adrenal support as I enter, hopefully, the final stage of prednisone tapering down at 2.5 milligrams. And this person wanted to know, how do I recover my adrenals? Well, what's amazing is I have a fellow pharmacist friend who is an expert at adrenal things, and her name is Isabella Wentz. She is the thyroid pharmacist, but the thyroid has a lot to do with adrenals, so she's also become an adrenal expert. And I asked her for tips, and this is what she said. She said, adrenal support for steroid tapering. Steroid medications are often used to reduce inflammation and suppress the immune response in a variety of conditions like asthma, arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, and allergic reactions. As we know, prednisone can be life-saving for some people, but it can also come with a long list of side effects. One of the more troublesome side effects we see with prolonged steroid use is pituitary suppression, right up here. Chronic use of corticosteroids impacts the function of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, by altering the feedback loops in the HPA. Because steroids act like cortisol in the body, certain receptors send the message to our body to stop its natural reproduction of cortisol. This shutdown of cortisol production can potentially cause adrenal insufficiency after corticosteroid treatment stops. Adrenal insufficiency is a very serious and potentially life-threatening situation. Many people want to stop steroids, but the withdrawal process, also known as steroid withdrawal syndrome, can be intense. In addition to symptoms like nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, headache, extreme fatigue, fever, joint pain, and mood swings, people may also end up with compromised adrenal function. Adrenal insufficiency following stopping oral treatment, so taking the pill, of steroids is no small issue. For those who experience it, it improves over time, but we still see 40% of people experiencing adrenal suppression 6 months after stopping steroids, 20% 2 years after cessation, and 5% 3 years after cessation. The good news is that there are ways to support your adrenals while tapering off your medications. And I'm going to share some natural ways to ease transition on your body. First things first, it's vitally important to taper off slowly and carefully under the care of your doctor. Never suddenly stop taking your medication. In order to support the adrenals, we have to focus on what I call sending safety signals to the body through the foods we eat and don't eat, the ways we act, and the strategies we employ to rest and boost oxytocin, known as the love hormone. We can promote feelings of safety and calm, bringing your adrenals back into balance. And Dr. Isabella Wentz has identified 14 safety signals that are crucial for adrenal balance. Here is a brief overview of each safety signal. Number 1, nutrient density. I encourage you to eat high-quality, nutrient-dense foods, emphasizing fats and proteins, which let the body know that its nutrition needs will be met. Highly processed foods that are full of empty calories send a message that our food supply is scarce, triggering our stress response and survival mode. Number 2, lowered inflammation. Poor gut health can be a major source of chronic inflammation, a top stressor that can contribute to adrenal imbalance. We will focus on reducing inflammation in the digestive system by removing the top inflammatory foods, adding gut-supporting foods, and using targeted supplements like the beneficial yeast Saccharomyces boulardii. Number 3, balanced blood sugar. Wild swings in blood sugar put stress on the body and contribute to adrenal dysfunction. And this can often feel like fatigue, irritability, anger, or anxiety. We balance blood sugar by lowering carbohydrate intake and focusing on protein and healthy fats at meals and eating regularly. Number 4, hydration. You may think only athletes need to replenish electrolytes to stay hydrated, but those with adrenal dysfunction are often deficient in electrolytes like sodium and potassium and stand to gain physical and mental stamina by maintaining adequate levels. Make sure you're consuming adequate amounts of natural sea salt, not iodized salt. And that's important while you're tapering, but not necessarily while you're on high doses of prednisone. Number 5, supporting mitochondria. Mitochondria produce ATP, our body's main source of energy. When mitochondria become damaged or impaired and are no longer working optimally, we may experience low energy and fatigue and dysregulation of our adrenal hormones. We can support mitochondria by supplying them with the nutrients they need to survive. Healthy fats from our diet, B vitamins, vitamin C, magnesium, D-ribose, and Dr. Isabella Wentz's personal favorite, carnitine. Number 6, circadian rhythm reset. When this natural rhythm becomes disrupted by the steroids, our energy levels and sleep are profoundly affected. We may experience daytime fatigue and all-around low energy, or a tired but wired feeling that makes it difficult to fall asleep at night, even when the body's exhausted. Try to get outside into natural sunlight within an hour of waking, or use a light therapy lamp, and get as much sunshine as you can throughout the day, and limit bright light exposure and devices in the evening. Next, positive thought patterns. Research has shown that negative thoughts can cause inflammation in our bodies, which can contribute to the development of all sorts of health issues. A positive mindset will support the body's healing process. Pleasurable activities is next. Allocating time for self-care is essential for healing, as it can counteract stress, which will benefit our adrenals. The oxytocin burst of pleasure we get when doing things we enjoy shifts us away from stress and creates healing. Next, do something creative just because. This sends a powerful safety signal to the body by rooting us in the present moment, increasing our awareness and mindfulness, and putting us in a perfect balance of sympathetic focus with parasympathetic relaxation and regeneration, known as the flow state. Next is gentle movement. We know that movement can help our bodies heal, but in times of adrenal stress, the wrong type of movement can be overwhelming and actually deepen our adrenal dysfunction. Focus on adrenal supportive forms of movement like walking, Pilates, and yoga. Next is slow your breath. We tend to breathe very quickly and shallowly when we are stressed. This in turn speeds up the heart rate and shifts the body into sympathetic state, taking long, deep breaths. Signals to our bodies that we are safe and can shift us into a healing parasympathetic state. Next, create healthy coping strategies. Many of us have unhealthy coping strategies that we turn to in times of stress or when we feel emotionally activated. This could look like eating sweets, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, or doom scrolling on your phone. Basically, anything to distract us from our feelings. Creating healthy coping strategies, learning to pause, taking a walk, journaling, etc., will empower us to be less reactive to situations in our life and reduce stress. Next is let go of heaviness. Many of us carry the heaviness of resentment, limiting beliefs, and trauma that keeps us stuck in a fight or flight state and prevents us from healing. It's important to identify and work through these beliefs so that your body can find a sense of safety and calm. Finally, healthy boundaries. When we set boundaries with loved ones, our job, and with other people and activities, we are protecting ourselves and limiting our exposure to stress while being respectful to others and letting them know what they can really expect from us. And Dr. Isabella covers all of these in safety signals in more depth in her book, The Adrenal Transformation Protocol. This book, she's a fellow pharmacist. Like, I just love it. Here it is up close. Adrenal Transformation Protocol, a 4-week plan to release stress symptoms and go from surviving to thriving, by Isabella Wentz, PharmD. And she's also written a whole bunch of other New York Times bestselling books. So what she says is that she covers all of these, like, that we just went through in more depth in her book. And she has a simple program that's 4 weeks to follow to help bring your adrenals back into balance and cultivate the tools for optimal energy levels, mental clarity, great sleep, and a great mood. This book includes practices and habits that you can start before tapering off steroids to help build resilience in your body. They can greatly help you during the transition off of them and provide you with long-term adrenal support, so that once you're off the prednisone, it's actually less likely that you'll need to get back on because you'll have brought your body into a better, more stable sense of peace, calm, and shifting from that sympathetic to the parasympathetic, peaceful part of life. So I encourage you to go buy this book, Adrenal Transformation Protocol. It's just barely released this week, and you can get access to it at any bookseller, Amazon, or any other bookseller. And just go and find the Adrenal Transformation Protocol by Isabella Wentz.
Prednisone is a poison. That's a comment somebody made on my YouTube channel, and I completely agree with that. Prednisone is a poison. However, this person went on to say things that I definitely do not agree with. And let me read the rest of the comment. Some of it's true, some of it is dangerously false. Prednisolone is a poison. If anyone is already started using it, then stop it. There is no need to taper it after stopping it. Just eat healthy food and water. If anyone is going to use it, then don't start using it. Okay. I agree with point number 1. Prednisone is a poison. However, there's a lot of nuance here. This is not black and white. The real important thing is that the dose makes the poison. Like, you drink too much water, it's poisonous. You have too much carbon dioxide, it's poisonous. Too much of anything can be poisonous, right? And so, yes, deciding to take prednisone, or prednisolone in this case, is the choice to take something that is toxic to your body for a purpose. And that's the context that's missing here, is that you don't just, like, I definitely don't agree with anybody just randomly taking a steroid like this, because that can be incredibly harmful. But if there is a purpose that is worth it, for example, I have an autoimmune condition called ITP. It means my body is attacking my blood cells responsible for clotting, called platelets. If I had not taken prednisone, I would have bled to death. It's not if, it was when. I had almost no ability to clot. And so I'm so grateful for prednisone that I was able to take that poison to stop the inflammation, the autoimmune attack that my body was doing to itself to save my life. It was totally worth it. And so when this person says, if anyone started using it, then stop it, Well, if I had stopped it, I would have probably died. So that is an incredibly dangerous statement to make for someone who would be taking it for my disease or others. And then the next statement is also very dangerous. There is no need to taper it after stopping it. That is completely false. There are a few situations where you can do that, and you need to work with your doctor. For example, if your doctor prescribed 5 to 10 days worth of prednisone, then yes, you can stop it. You do not need to taper. If you have been taking prednisone for at least 10 to 14 days or longer, then you need to taper. You must work with your doctor to slowly stop taking prednisone over time. Tapering means that, say your doctor prescribed 20 milligrams. Well, you don't just suddenly stop taking it and go from 20 to 0. You go from 20 to 10 to 5 to 2.5 and off. Or there's a infinite variety of other ways you could do it in between. But you don't just stop. That's called going cold turkey. And the reason we don't do that is because going cold turkey off of prednisone can cause adrenal crisis that can be fatal. Prednisone is mimicking your body's hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone that helps you respond to emergencies. And if you stop taking prednisone, then the whole system that goes from your brain to the top of your kidneys that turns on your stress response takes a long time. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes days to weeks to months to even a year in some cases to slowly turn back on. It's not like a light switch that you can just flick on. It's more like a sunrise that slowly gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And so we need to give our bodies the chance to slowly turn that system back on. And if you follow this person's really misinformed advice, there is no need to taper after stopping it. You could die. Your blood pressure would crash, your blood sugar would crash, your sodium would have issues, and you would have like multi-organ system failure. And that can kill you. So do not take this person's advice about no need to taper, because you absolutely need to taper unless your doctor told you you don't have to. But that's the only case, is if your doctor said, oh, it's okay, just go off of it, and they're the ones giving you that medical advice. Otherwise, that is way too reckless and risky, taking your own life in your hands like that. Finally, this person's comment ends with, just eat healthy food and water. If anyone's going to use it, then don't start using it. Okay, we'll start with the second to last sentence. Just eat healthy food and water. I completely agree that just eating healthy food and water can do a lot for your health. It can hopefully slow down the inflammation that is causing whatever you're taking prednisone for, when we're not feeding our body the standard American diet that is full of all sorts of fake, harmful, food-like products that truly our bodies should not be consuming. But they taste so good, right? And so if you just eat healthy food and only drink water and not alcohol and not highly caffeinated products and not highly sugar-rich products, that's just healthy food and water. I totally agree with that. Great. But it's not enough. It's simply not enough for certain people. That's not going to be able to replace prednisone. If you're like me and your body is so out of whack that your doctor's prescribing high doses of prednisone, healthy food and water isn't going to help you. Like, it might decrease the percentage by like that much, but I absolutely needed prednisone to save my life. And finally, the last sentence, if anyone is going to use it, then don't start using it. Again, very harmful. Unless it's a lot of reasons doctors prescribe prednisone, I agree with. So in my situation, you might be killing me by making this comment. In other situations, like back pain, bronchitis, a lot of rashes, there's no evidence that prednisone helps, and there's evidence that it hurts. And so if your doctor prescribed it and didn't clearly explain how likely you are to get benefit from taking prednisone and other steroids, then maybe this person's right. If you're going to use it, then don't start using it. Because in those conditions, it is more harmful than helpful. Like, for example, with bronchitis, the idea is to stop people from coughing. And if they take prednisone, they don't have less days of coughing. What they do have is more side effects than as compared to placebo. So it didn't do anything helpful, and it made their lives more miserable. So in certain situations, I do agree with that sentence. The moral of the story here is prednisone is a miraculous medication that is a poison, in that the dose makes the poison. And if you happen to go cold turkey, that can kill you. And always make your decisions about this medication under your doctor's supervision, because random comments like this on the internet, like, I don't think you can give like liability in a lawsuit, but like if somebody actually believed what this person said, they could kill them. Like, can you tell how upset this makes me? Don't make comments like this on the internet, okay? Everybody make a really nice, helpful comment for other people taking prednisone. Like, it's okay. It's worth it. You're going to be okay. I don't know. Make a good, helpful comment. See if that'll brighten the internets for today. And if you want help knowing how to find that balance of benefit and risk, I created a prednisone checklist, and you can go through and check off all the ways that you can counteract prednisone side effects to prevent complications, so that you'll want to get off prednisone immediately. That you can do whatever is in your hands to prevent the complications from getting any worse. Just click the link below to download my prednisone checklist. People often wonder if there's anything that they can take to enhance their ability to taper. People reach out to me all the time. Is there any way to make this whole tapering thing easier, or to protect my body while I'm on prednisone for so long? Well, I have just the thing for you. I had to take prednisone for 8.5 to 9 months, and it was a horrible experience. And so right toward the end of that, I had this epiphany moment that I discovered that I needed to create a supplement designed specifically for people on prednisone to give back the nutrients that prednisone steals, so that you can feel like yourself again and successfully taper off prednisone. And that's called Nutranize Zone. It took me a year to develop it and find the best manufacturers and ingredients. And it's been on the market for over 7 years now, and people love it. I wanted to share a few success stories of people who've taken Nutranize Zone while tapering off prednisone, and their real words of exactly how they describe the experience of taking Nutranize, prednisone, and tapering off. So without further ado, here are real prednisone warriors and their experience on Nutranize. So the first person, I started Nutranize about 2 weeks ago. It's a concoction that counteracts the side effects of prednisone. I started on 25 milligrams in May and have tapered down to 4 milligrams currently. It seems to help in the tapering process. So far, I've had no severe flares. It helps me to sleep better at night too. That was number one. Number two, good news is I am rather suddenly, about 4 days ago, feeling better. This was about 8 days after starting your supplements. You said it can take longer depending on the dosage, duration, and disease. At least the first two apply to me, and perhaps suspected GCA as well. That's a disease. I woke this morning going, oh my gosh, this is the real me back. So just get Nutranize Zone if you want the real you back. Third one, I was researching ideas to help me taper off prednisone more smoothly. I had been on high doses after a nasty virus starting in late July 22, and I couldn't get below 12 milligrams until I started to receive a biologic injection for asthma in late November. This was extremely helpful, so I no longer seemed to need the prednisone for asthma symptoms. I was able to decrease as far as my asthma was concerned, but I was having trouble working and functioning because of extremely low energy. After reading about Nutranize Zone, I decided to try it. While it is not a miracle, I find it very helpful. I am able to decrease at the rate of 0.5 milligrams a week without as much fatigue or as many negative thoughts. It is still not easy, but it certainly seems to be easier. Number 4, my husband has been taking both prednisone and Nutranize Zone for over a year. Tapering off now, his bone density test was good, and he sleeps well. Dr. Megan is wonderful. She has been willing to answer my many questions. Products always arrive on time. Now, this came from a pretty skeptical guy. He said, in the midst of our highly functional medical system, I was very relieved to discover the Prednisone Pharmacist online, and am spreading the word about her where I can. I read and listened to almost all Megan's fast, free, and personal information and expertise on this poison miracle drug. After careful consideration and relevant consultations, I ordered her Nutranize supplements on a 3-month trial. I will continue them until I'm off prednisone. Initially, I was disappointed at reading a testimonial that described huge improvement after only a day on the supplements. At that time, I was several days in, but no apparent effect. However, after a full week, I awoke one morning stunned to realize that I felt like my old self, clear-headed, eager to get up and get active. Depression, extreme fatigue, and energy all distinctly improved until soon after the next taper began. Once adjusted to the new lower dose, I felt relatively much better again. Thank you, Megan, for this boost in well-being and hope. I am also most grateful for your personal and helpful responses to my general queries. So then, next person ordered on Amazon. So you get 2 bottles when you order. That's 1 purchase. The morning bottle was missing in my delivery, and Dr. Megan mailed me a replacement. Appreciate the great service. I bought another full set before I even wrote to Amazon and Dr. Megan. I could not risk running out. This is actually helping me taper. I didn't want to interrupt my daily 2-time usage. My purple spots are practically gone. I'm not as tired. The pain is bearable. I don't need Tylenol. It's helping a lot. Great product. Okay, this person has colitis. I'm on 30 milligrams now for over a month for colitis flare. I've already been experiencing so many mental and emotional and physical agony from the withdrawal of Dosage. So that's an opioid pain medication. Now I experience agitation and depression and fatigue and weight swelling. Your supplements are pretty good. I also take B vitamin. Just started. I have crying spells and rage, and I suppose that's the prednisone. We'll be tapering off to 5 milligrams. We'll be on 30 down to 0 in 2 months total. Okay, next person said, this stuff, meaning prednisone, is absolutely insidious. I've been on it so long now, the taper is starting. Your vitamins are very convenient. The nighttime formula helps me rest and calms me down. This is very interesting. I read the comments online on your site about people who've lost hair from prednisone, but mine has changed for the better. My hairdresser said, my goodness, your hair has become stronger and fuller. What are you doing? I attribute it to your product. It gave back something in my body that was missing. All right, here's another one. I just received my 2nd order of Nutranize. Dr. Megan has been so helpful when I have called her to make my order. I had so many questions, and she is very knowledgeable and able to answer them. The Nutranize arrived quickly. They are for my son, who has been on high doses, prednisone 60 milligrams, and is now tapering down on dexamethasone 16 milligrams. I definitely think they helped in controlling his appetite, moods, and sleep. I feel confident that he is replacing the nutrients that the steroids are stealing from his body. In spite of high doses of steroids and now on chemo, he remains stable and strong. Thank you, Dr. Megan, for your knowledge, your product, and all your videos and blogs, sharing all the important information we need to know. I highly recommend this product, and my son's oncology team has approved it for him. Next person. Ordering my 3rd batch of Nutranize Zone. Started on 40 milligrams of prednisone and now tapering down over the course of 11-ish weeks and have taken the supplements for the most part. I feel that Nutranize Zone has definitely minimized the more debilitating side effects, particularly cravings for food, which I remember was one main challenge I faced in the early days. I sleep well at night, I do not experience mood swings, and have not gained body weight on a regular diet. However, I would not say that every single side effect has been combated, as I got a cluster of acne on my cheeks and a bit of moon face. For me, these side effects are minor compared to the major ones that I have not experienced and was warned so much about by many providers once prescribed prednisone. And for this, I'm grateful to have Nutranize Zone. Thanks so much for developing a product that reduces the stress of being on such an aggressive treatment, Dr. Megan. All right, next one. Hello, Dr. Megan. I just wanted to let you know I've tapered off prednisone after 18 months from 15 milligrams down to 0. I took Nutranize the entire time. I gained some weight that I'm beginning to take off. Bone density never dropped. Sleep wasn't a huge problem. A1C jumped to 6.1, but is 5.7 now. Having not been on prednisone without Nutranize, I don't have a control group comparison, but my symptoms were minor, and I'm attributing the results to your product. I hope the PMR that started all this is gone for good, but if not, I'll reactivate my subscription. Thank you, Rick. All right. This person was diagnosed with PMR or polymyalgia rheumatica, but it's tricky. The doctor's not 100% sure on the diagnosis. And so she says, I continue to take Nutranize and will continue to because I believe in it. I started out on 30 milligrams of prednisone over the 1.5 years, slowly lowered my dose, having to go up a few times because my body couldn't handle the taper. I never gained weight, nor did I have moon face or any of the other terrible side effects, at least that I know of. Of course, I can't say that it was due to the Nutranize, but then again, I can't say it wasn't because of it. I'm giving you this brief history in case it helps you in any way. Here's another polymyalgia rheumatica or PMR patient. I was diagnosed with PMR. Started out with 2 20 milligram tablets to control it. My doctor wants to find my wall about 60 days in. I go from 20 to 10 in a month by reductions every 6 days of 10 to 16%, largely based on Dr. Megan's taper chart. Make sure you've downloaded that. I had a little problem going from 20 to 17.5. I toggled back and forth with 20 being the PM dose for a couple of days. Then smooth sailing to 10. At 10 milligram for the first time, I had no more prednisone side effects or the now normal feelings 3 hours after taking it. But not feeling too great either. Whether withdrawal combined with symptoms creeping back, it was unclear. The morning of day 3, I bumped back to 12 milligrams to see if that was magic. It was! So, realizing I am a control sample of 1, here is what I've learned. When tapering, you'll get the exact same effects you have experienced with each smaller dose. When you do stop feeling those effects, you're at your wall. My next step is to run 2 times 11 for 12 weeks and try to get 1 milligram reductions from there. I do find the Nutranize very helpful. All right, here's Suzanne. She says, surprise, surprise, I've been on Zone now. Still on 10 milligram, can't taper, tried, and I lost 5 pounds without trying. Just another advantage to taking it nonstop, helping me sleep. All of these people have had positive experience using Nutranize Zone to help them taper off prednisone. And it's not necessarily to help with the taper, which it does, but to help replenish the nutrients that prednisone is stealing. That as the longer you take prednisone, the more nutrients it's stealing from your bones, your muscles, your liver, the more damage it's causing. And so when we give back those nutrients depleted by prednisone, we're minimizing the damage from such long-term treatment so that you can feel like yourself again, like so many people have, that they are giving back what the steroid steals and feeling like themselves again. And you can be the same. If you go to Nutranize.com or Amazon.com, you can get Nutranize Zone. You've got the morning bottle and the bedtime bottle. You take 2 in the morning and 2 at bedtime. And the combination of these will help you feel like yourself again while tapering off prednisone. And then while off of prednisone, you can continue taking it as long as you're still recovering from prednisone to help boost back up those nutrient levels to where they were before you started treatment. So just go to Nutranize.com today to get the supplement that you need to support you during your prednisone journey. The 10 Ds you must consider when tapering prednisone. These help you decide whether you can even taper prednisone, how quickly you can taper prednisone, and maybe alternative strategies you can use while tapering off of prednisone. I'm Dr. Megan, board certified doctor of pharmacy and prednisone pharmacist. And I'm here to share with you the 10 most important things to consider. So first, you've got to consider your doctor. Your doctor is the expert in your care, and everything I'm about to share with you is secondary to whatever your doctor says. Your doctor, the person prescribing the prednisone for you, is the expert on your care, and nothing I say should contradict what your doctor says. You've got to work in close communication with your doctor, and you could consider sharing some strategies that I'm about to share with you, but the doctor is the key. Keep your doctor in close proximity to all medication decisions you make, and they are the expert on your care. Okay. Number 2 is your disease. What's amazing about prednisone is that it can be prescribed for nearly any part of your body by almost any kind of doctor except psychiatrists. An eye doctor, skin doctor, foot doctor, mouth doctor, teeth, all of them can prescribe prednisone because there are different types of inflammation throughout your body that can benefit from treatment with prednisone. And so your disease really matters. Whether you have rheumatoid arthritis or asthma makes a big difference on the tapering strategy and what you can expect as a successful outcome. And so talk to your doctor about what tapering off prednisone might mean for your disease. That's not a question I can answer because I don't have access to your medical information. The other thing you've got to consider about your disease is that it must be under control. Do not consider tapering until your disease is fully stable. If you're having flares, you're having inability to breathe, whatever it is you're taking prednisone for, if the prednisone isn't currently controlling it, do not consider tapering. You've got to let your body have the benefit of your current treatment. For example, when I took prednisone, I started out at 60 and I would taper down to 15 and I'd get stuck right there. And then my disease would flare. So I had to go back up to 20. At that point, my body was no longer in control with the prednisone. And so tapering was not a good strategy at that moment. I needed to give it a chance for prednisone to do its job, to get the inflammation under control, to get my autoimmune condition stabilized before we could move on to the next D's to consider. Number 3D is drug. Which drug you're taking. The most common drug is prednisone. Prednisone is prescribed by 21 million times a year in the United States of America. It's the most common oral steroid, corticosteroid, glucocorticoid medication in the United States. But other medications are very similar to it, such as methylprednisolone or Medrol, dexamethasone, hydrocortisone, and in the United Kingdom and other countries, prednisolone. And so it really matters which drug you're using. If you're using prednisone, methylprednisolone, or prednisolone, everything I'm about to tell you is about the same. But dexamethasone and hydrocortisone are quite different as far as the timing. So all 3 of those medications I first mentioned, they all last about 2 hours before 90% of them is gone, whereas hydrocortisone is gone after 30 minutes. It's a lot more short-acting medication, and dexamethasone can last up to 3 days. So the tapering strategy for dexamethasone and hydrocortisone is very different than the tapering strategy for prednisone. The next D is alternative drugs. These are steroid-sparing agents that may allow you to use less prednisone. The thing about these medications, and I'm super grateful that they exist, is they're able to decrease the amount of prednisone you're required to use to keep your disease under control. For example, for somebody with rheumatoid arthritis, joint pain, there are lots of alternative medications, whether oral or injectable, medications that can cost anywhere from pennies to tens of thousands of dollars per month. These medications can truly help the pain and inflammation go away, but they take a long time to kick in. Often it's 3 to 6 months or even longer before you even know whether they work. And some of them only work for certain people. And so you won't even know whether you're one of those people until 3 to 6 months have passed. And so that's why we're taking the prednisone, to kind of bridge the gap between starting the expensive biologic medication, for example, and having it kick in fully. So giving those medications an opportunity to fully kick in is really important. And finding the one that works for you before fully tapering off prednisone is the best strategy. And definitely work with your doctor. If you haven't been offered one, say, hey, is there anything else I could try that might make it so I don't have to take so much prednisone? Because every milligram matters. The amount of milligrams or grams of prednisone over a lifetime really matters when it comes to the damage that prednisone can cause. So you've got to consider that. Number 5 is the dose. If you're only taking between 0 and 7.5 milligrams, your dose taper is going to be very different than if you're starting at 60 milligrams or higher. Because when you're that high, you can drop by these huge milligram doses. But when you're getting below 10 milligrams, the dose drops get smaller. And what's important to consider is that it's not the number of milligram drops that matters, it's the percentage of the dose that matters. So when you drop from 60 down to 50, that's 10 milligram drop. If you were to go from 20 milligrams to 10 milligrams, that's still a 10 milligram drop. But percentage-wise, dropping from 60 down to 50 is somewhere around a 20% drop. But 20 down to 10 is a 50% drop. And so while that 10 milligram drop from 60 to 50 might be totally appropriate at that point, from 20 to 10, it is not appropriate because it's such a humongous percentage drop. So as far as the dose, we always want to keep it between 10 to 20% of a drop. So going from 20 to 17.5 instead of 20 to 10 is a lot easier on a person. But definitely whatever dose your doctor is prescribing is what you should do unless you have permission to change it. Number 6 is duration. How long have you been taking prednisone? If you've been taking prednisone for 10 to 14 days, then it's possible that you may not need to taper. That's really between you and your doctor, and you have to listen to your body to see if your body really feels okay after not tapering. But for a lot of people, 10 to 14 days, it's okay to just go cold turkey. For others, going cold turkey can literally be fatal because it can put you into adrenal failure, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. If you're on prednisone longer term, say 3 months or more, then you may need to take a lot longer to taper. So if you've been on prednisone for days, then you can taper for days. If you've been on prednisone for weeks, then it'll probably take you weeks to taper. If you've been on prednisone for months, it'll probably take you months to taper off. It's not an exact ratio, but in general, the longer you take it, the longer it will take to taper off. Number 7D is DNA, or your genetics. I was stunned when I read a textbook that said that prednisone and cortisol can affect up to 2/3 of your genes. They can either turn them on or turn them off. They can make your body make proteins or stop making proteins. And many other things can be changed when you take prednisone. So your DNA really matters when considering the taper. That's why a prednisone taper is not a specific science. There is no perfect way to taper. They've tried doing studies of dropping in precise ways for an entire population of people, and it doesn't work because it's very person specific. Your DNA really matters when it comes to tapering off prednisone. So if your doctor is saying, well, this is how I always do it, that doesn't really matter. You are different than all of the other patients that your doctor has had. And so you will have a different experience than other people. Number 8 is damage. So prednisone causes more side effects than any other drug. It is truly amazing how it can help us, but it is truly stunning how it can harm us. Prednisone can cause permanent, irreversible damage to your eyes, like glaucoma and cataracts, to your bones, like osteoporosis, fractures, loss of height, and osteonecrosis, or bone death, to your muscles, leading to atrophy and myopathy, to your heart. It can make your heart have to pump harder and have arrhythmias and other things that lead to permanent damage. And to your skin. If you get stretch marks from prednisone, they don't go away. They are permanent, called striae. They're permanent side effects. So it's really important that you do whatever you can to minimize those milligrams that you're taking, and that your doctor is helping you take the opportunity to minimize those side effects. If you're wondering my best tips for how to minimize the damage from prednisone, download my prednisone checklist now. It goes through all of the evidence-based ways you can minimize what prednisone is doing to you. Because if you're watching this video,
you're probably on prednisone long term. And so you want to do whatever you can to minimize that damage. Just download my prednisone checklist now. Number 9 is diet. So what you eat matters when on prednisone, and the nutritional status of your body really makes a difference when it comes to the side effects you experience and your ability to taper. So prednisone is a glucocorticoid, which means it's changing the way your body utilizes insulin and sugar or glucose. And when you are eating the standard American diet of fast food and lots of ultra processed foods that are high in sugar and high in salt, that's really hard on your prednisone body. And so it can be harder to recover from taking prednisone because of what you're putting into your body. In addition, scientists have discovered that prednisone is stealing nutrients from your body. It's well established that prednisone steals calcium and vitamin D, leading to that damage of osteoporosis and bone loss. Other things they've discovered is that it's stealing chromium, leading to the high blood sugar and high weight gain. So you've got to be giving those back. That's one of the reasons I invented Nutranize Zone. It gives back the nutrients that prednisone has stolen. You can get it at nutranize.com or on amazon.com. And it replenishes those nutrients. So you have the best opportunity to successfully taper off prednisone and feel like yourself again after taking prednisone, so that you can fully recover, because you're giving your body the fuel it needs to replenish what prednisone has been doing to minimize that damage by getting your body back up to the nutritional status that you've got to have to fully recover from taking prednisone. Number 10 is discontinuation syndrome. I like to call it withdrawal syndrome, but I had to find a word that started with the D, right? Prednisone withdrawal syndrome, or steroid withdrawal syndrome, is a constellation of symptoms documented in scientific literature that talks about how prednisone causes your body to change. And when you stop taking it, your body needs time to undo the changes that it made in response to taking prednisone. So your body needs the chance to break down the receptors it made to use up the drug. It made extra because you were taking such high doses, more than your body's used to when it comes to cortisol. So you've got to give your body a chance to break down these glucocorticoid receptors, to change all of the things that it changed in response to taking this artificial cortisol that you've been taking as prednisone. And so when you have this dramatic loss, whether it's of benzodiazepines like Xanax, people go into withdrawals. Whether it's alcohol, when somebody's addicted to alcohol and they stop taking it, they go into withdrawals. When somebody's addicted to opioids like heroin or hydrocodone or fentanyl, they go into withdrawals when they don't have the medication, right? Prednisone doesn't cause addiction, but it does cause dependence. Your body has become dependent on it. You're no longer able to make your own cortisol. And so if you stop taking it, it can be fatal. You can go into full adrenal failure, adrenal crisis that is multi-system organ failure. And so you do not want to stop taking prednisone suddenly. You want to give your body the chance to slowly change over time in response to decreasing the dose slowly over time, so you don't deal with the withdrawal syndrome. You want to know, going deep about what that is, I have a fantastic video all about prednisone withdrawal syndrome. But essentially, you feel awful. You feel like you maybe have the flu. You're stuck in bed, no energy, totally feel empty inside. Your muscles and your bones may ache. You may have a headache. You may have a fever. Everybody feels it a little differently, but it's essentially, you just feel lacking. And if you're doing that, that means you're tapering too fast, and you need to slow down that taper to wherever it was that you weren't feeling those symptoms. And finally, a bonus D is deficiency. Adrenal insufficiency is sometimes, for some people, being on prednisone long-term can make it so that their adrenal system doesn't recover. And that is called adrenal insufficiency. And for a very small percentage of people, they must continue taking steroids long-term. And so that's adrenal insufficiency. And I've got a lot of videos all about that if you want to go deeper. But for that, you've got to realize that you have become dependent on this medication and it is keeping you alive. And getting to the lowest effective dose is the goal, to minimize the side effects and to keep you alive. So in that case, you should see an endocrinologist to find out the best treatment plan for you. But if you're wondering my best strategy for tapering off prednisone, I have a printable taper chart. I go through lots of different methods of tapering, starting at different doses, so that you can find one that works for you based on the experience of many others who have tapered in the past and published taper strategies in medical journals. So you can click the link below to download that now and print it off. And then once you download that, I'll send you an email with instructions of exactly how to use it. So just click the link to download that now. Okay, Melissa, she says, I tried 3 times to taper off prednisone. Is decreasing by 0.5 milligrams a month long enough to not have withdrawal? Currently on 5 milligrams a day. Been on prednisone for 2 years. ACTH is normal. Okay, so Melissa, I don't know what you're taking prednisone for, but you've been on 5 milligrams and you are getting stuck. You're not able to taper off prednisone. And 0.5 milligrams a month is definitely a good strategy. There's a really cool website that I linked to in my How to Taper Prednisone blog. You should go there. That it gives you like all of these awesome options for how to taper prednisone. All right, so you've got something going on in your lungs that is not fun, and that looks horrible. I'm sorry that you've got to deal with that. And if your ABPA is under control and it's really just the withdrawals that you're dealing with, because that's the thing. There's 3 things we're looking for when we're tapering prednisone. Is your disease under control? And I'm assuming you're checking the mark that yes. If so, then you can move on to tapering. And so we're waiting to see, is it going to flare, right? Then we're looking for withdrawal symptoms. And those are feeling yucky, like you kind of have the flu, you have low energy, you can't get off the couch, fatigue. Some people get a fever, weight loss, you just feel yucky. And so if that's the withdrawal you're referring to, that's the second thing to look for. Finally, we're waiting for your adrenal system to recover. So withdrawal is actually different from your adrenal system. So I'm glad to hear number 3 is ACTH is normal. That means your adrenal system is on board. It's just the withdrawal symptoms. And the withdrawals are different than the adrenal system because it has to do with the glucocorticoid receptors themselves. So this has to do with your ability to make prednisone. This has to do with your ability to receive prednisone. And there's these glucocorticoid receptors waiting for there to be enough cortisol or prednisone equivalent to stimulate them. And if they're empty, they scream and say, I'm empty, fill me. And that's the withdrawal feeling that we're feeling. And so that is really hard to predict when your body is going to slowly break down each glucocorticoid receptor. And it's based on your genetics, based on your environment, and there's literally no way to predict it. And so it's just waiting. Okay, will my body let me break these glucocorticoid receptors down? And so, yeah, 0.5 milligrams a month might be enough. On that website I'm referring to, it talks about like the every other day dosing. I'm not sure if you've ever tried that, where on Monday you'd take 5 milligrams, on Tuesday you take 4 milligrams, Wednesday 5 milligrams, Thursday 4 milligrams, and you just alternate 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4. Or you do it even slower than that. 5, 4, 5, 5, 4, like every 2 days, or even just 1 day a week, you go down. And it's just a really gentle taper. 0.5 milligrams a month could be, but there's no way to know until you try it. Every single person is different. It is an art. Tapering is an art when we're getting to this point. When you're below 5 milligrams, it is literally listening to your body and finding when it's reacting and when it's not. And it's just really hard. You have to pay attention. And then you said you have stable symptoms and you're on insulin. So that's good that you've got that insulin on board. I'm assuming it's because of diabetes. And sometimes, theoretically, when we get lower doses of prednisone, you need lower doses of insulin. So glad you've got the insulin and hoping you're testing, making sure that your blood sugars are stable and you don't get too low. But it sounds like you've been on a really slow taper. And you've tried 3 times. How do I know if I'm tapering off prednisone too fast? Well, there are certain things to look out for that I'm going to outline in this video.
so that you know whether it's the taper or something else that is telling you that what you're doing is too fast. Before I dive deeper, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Megan, the Prednisone Pharmacist. And a resource I have for you that is super valuable is my printable prednisone taper chart. You can print it off and use it while you go through the rest of this video, or print it off after watching it. But download my prednisone taper chart so you know exactly the safe ways to taper off prednisone. So how would you know if you're going off prednisone too fast? Because the fact is, a doctor can prescribe prednisone in an infinite variety of ways. They can start at 1,000 milligrams or at 1 milligram. They can have you go for 5 days or for 5 years. There's no limit to the variation and the creativity a doctor can give in prescribing prednisone. So how do you know if you're tapering too fast? Well, let's talk about what is a taper first of all. A taper is when you're slowly decreasing the dose over time so that you're giving your body the chance to build itself back up in response to having that super high level of prednisone, which is mimicking our body's natural hormone cortisol, so that it can recover. For example, in the springtime, after a whole winter of grass not being watered, of freezing temperatures, and maybe even snow being on grass, the grass has gone dormant and it's ugly and yellowish, greenish, grayish, brownish, right? It's not pretty. So that first day you turn on the sprinklers, does the grass turn green? No, it takes time. It takes time to recover that ability for the old grass to die out, for the new grass to grow and turn rich, dark green, lush, soft grass. That's what I want us to envision as we're talking about how do you know if you're tapering too fast. If you are suddenly dropping too much, then you might have been expecting the grass to turn green with just one watering, when you really needed to water it for a lot longer for it to recover, okay? So what is too fast? Is it dropping every day or every week or every month? It's dependent on every single person because every single person has different DNA, disease, and dose that they're taking. And so there's no way to compare, well, my sister did this or my neighbor had that. It doesn't matter. It's you specific with your DNA, your disease, your current inflammation symptoms, okay? And so you'll know you're tapering too fast if you feel like the people I'm about to read their descriptions, if these are the symptoms you're experiencing, all right? Let me just read real words that people have described, wondering, is this prednisone withdrawal? One person said, why is my body so stiff, especially my legs? Another person said, I am down to 3 per day from 45 milligrams 2 years ago. I have no energy and feel nauseous all the time. Is it because of the prednisone? I feel awful most of the time. Is it normal to have extreme fatigue some days where I can't do anything? Huge hair loss since the cut from 30 to 20 on down now. Also, since the initial cut from 40 to 20, I'm very tired and sleep a lot now. Is this normal? What should I look for? Another person said, I had an extremely difficult response to tapering from prednisone for GCA, 60 milligrams after 4 weeks to 50 milligrams for 2 weeks, and then 40 milligrams. I had to stop after 5 days and go back up to 50 milligrams. The response was like the worst of low blood sugar episodes. Listen carefully. These are some really important words, she says. Fatigue, shakiness, lightheadedness, feeling of being hollow inside, all energy drained out, hot flushes, etc. Is this explained due to the increased number of cortisol receptors my body developed due to the period of high prednisone dose and then leaving these hungry once the prednisone dose was reduced? That's exactly what's happening. She got it. She must have seen a previous video of mine. That what is happening when you take prednisone is your body is changing the number of what are called glucocorticoid receptors in your body. Normally, you make the equivalent of 2.5 about milligrams of cortisol per day. That's what naturally your body was making before you started taking prednisone. And so when you start taking this pill, it turns off a whole cascade of hormones in your body called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, 2 places near your brain and 1 above your kidney. And it's turning that system off so you are no longer making cortisol and you're now giving cortisol by pill in the form of prednisone. Then you normally had, say, 1 glucocorticoid receptor per amount of cortisol you had floating around, but you've gone way beyond 2.5 milligrams, right? For me, I was up at 60 milligrams. Other people are at 40 or 20, whatever it is. 20 is 10 times the amount that you're normally making almost. And so your body, to be able to actually use it, has to build these receptors on the cells in order to actually use up this extra cortisol floating around. It has to have somewhere to put it so that it can do its job, turning on things, turning off things, and changing things, making you feel better. The reason you're taking it, it has to make more of these receptors. But when you take prednisone from 30 to 20, that's this huge drop. And you have these receptors that a third of them are now not being triggered, right? When you drop from 30 to 20, that's 33% that's gone. And so you had all the receptors built up for this 30 milligram dose you were used to. Now a third of these receptors are empty. And they're figuratively screaming, I'm empty, feed me, I need something. And so you feel these symptoms that we've described. Specifically in the literature, these are the words that scientific studies use to describe. They can call it either prednisone withdrawal syndrome, steroid withdrawal syndrome, or glucocorticoid withdrawal syndrome. And in general, with other medications like opioids, such as heroin, benzodiazepines, such as Xanax, or alcohol, it's generally either called withdrawal syndrome or discontinuation syndrome. So these are the symptoms specific to the prednisone withdrawal syndrome: dizziness, lightheadedness, fatigue, bone pain, joint pain, headaches, hypoglycemia, and that means low blood sugar, hypotonia, that means low grip strength, like you're just not able to be as strong as usual, nausea, sleep disturbances, weight changes, and fever. And back to those last few. The sleep disturbances, for some people, this can mean they are exhausted and tired all the time. They're basically stuck in bed and they just feel the need to sleep all the time. For other people, they're suddenly experiencing insomnia and not able to sleep at night. It can be either direction, either no sleep or can't do anything but sleep. And then weight changes. Most people gain weight the higher the milligram dose. And so when they're tapering down, they lose weight, theoretically, or they stop the weight gain. Some people dramatically lose a lot of weight because the nausea and things are so horrible and they're stuck on the couch. They're not feeding themselves. Their muscle loss is dramatic and it can be really, really hard. That can happen. Or some people are like, thank heavens, I'm not one of the 70% of people who gained weight on prednisone on those high doses. I'm so lucky, look at me. And then they taper down low and now they're suddenly gaining weight. They're like, that wasn't fair. I thought if I got lower, I would lose weight. That's not typical, but some people it does happen. So you can have changes that are really unfair, annoying, and non-specific. That's the medical term. So it's really confusing. Are you having prednisone withdrawal or, for example, joint pain, muscle pain? Are you having your disease coming back? It's so hard to find the difference. Where is that line where you can tell, oh, this is clearly prednisone withdrawal and this is clearly my disease coming back? It's really hard to find. And that's why you've got to be in close communication with your doctor. And those are the things to be looking for when you're tapering. Is my disease coming back? Or am I going through prednisone withdrawal syndrome? The other tricky part about the non-specific nature of the prednisone withdrawal syndrome is that it could be mistaken for something else. I had a patient whose family called me. They're like, Mom's been in bed. This was back in 2020. And we're pretty sure, like we thought she had COVID. And so now we think she had long COVID and she's been non-functional, and they like listed every single one of these symptoms. She's been stuck in bed. And they're like, but we couldn't do testing back then because they were living in New York and it was right at the height of the pandemic that they thought she got COVID. At the same time, her prednisone prescription ran out and she stopped taking it. So they couldn't do testing. There wasn't testing yet to test for COVID, but she also had stopped taking prednisone. So was it COVID? Because a lot of these symptoms could be COVID or long COVID, or was it prednisone withdrawal syndrome? And she's still suffering from that. It was a really tricky situation. And so they were so grateful to find out that it probably was prednisone withdrawal. And let's just give her back some medication. So what do you do if you have prednisone withdrawal syndrome? I gave you the clue already. You go back. Go back to the lowest effective dose where you are not feeling those symptoms. For every single person, that lowest effective dose will be different. And so you've got to find what that is. For one of these people, she went from 60 down to 50 down to 40 and had to go back up to 50. For her, that was the place. She needed to stay on 50 longer. She was tapering too fast and was experiencing prednisone withdrawal symptoms. So you get back to that other place, and instead of dropping this huge drop from 50 to 40, maybe next time she only goes to 45, right? Or maybe she does alternate day dosing of 50, 45, 50, 45, 50, 45. I have a lot of tips and even more tricks of what you can do to optimize your prednisone tapering in my printable taper chart. So you should download it now for ways you can taper. You can print them off, mark it with your pen to keep track, and know exactly what dose you're supposed to take, when you're supposed to take it, with a lot of options so that you can feel confident that you're going to get off safely and recover from taking prednisone. Just click the link to download my prednisone taper chart. It's printable and free now. Tapering off of prednisone over 7 days. Wondering how to do it? Hi, I'm Dr. Megan, the prednisone pharmacist. I'm here to give you tips about how to taper off prednisone over 7 days. And there's a lot of factors to consider that I go through in another video. So you should check that out if you're wondering, can I even taper? But supposing that you can taper, you've worked with your doctor to figure this out, generally your doctor's prescription should outline exactly what to do. So generally the pill bottle itself will say, take this many per day for this many days. But if you don't know what to do, here's a possibility. But your doctor and your specific prescription is definitely the best default answer here. So one way to taper prednisone over 7 days is, say you were to start at 40 milligrams. That's a really common starting dose. For the day 1, you would take 40 milligrams. Day 2, you would take 30 milligrams. Day 3, you would take 20 milligrams. Day 4, you would take 15 milligrams. Day 5, you would take 10 milligrams. Day 6, you would take 5 milligrams. And day 7, you would take 2.5 milligrams. Day 8, you're on 0 milligrams. If you're feeling okay, success, move on. If you're feeling yucky, awful, whatever it is you took it for isn't gone, let your doctor know you could be having a flare of your disease or you could be going through withdrawals. So that is one possible 7-day taper. Another question people might have about tapering off prednisone in 7 days is, what if my doctor only gave me one size of pill? Say, for example, your doctor only gave you prednisone 20 milligram tablets. Can I do that kind of a taper? Okay, so let's try that. If you had 20 milligram tablets, on day 1, you're taking 2 tablets to get to 40 milligrams. On day 2, you're taking 1.5 tablets to get to 30. Day 3, you're taking 1 tablet. Day 4, you're taking 3/4 of a tablet. Day 5, you're taking a half a tablet. Day 6, you're taking 1/4 of a tablet. And day 7, you're taking 1/8 of a tablet, which is basically just powder at that point. You would need a different strength, right? You could not use 20 milligram tablets. You would have to have either 5s or 10s in order to get to that dose. But do you even need to taper if your doctor just prescribes 7 days of prednisone? One thing that doctors often do will prescribe 7 days straight of prednisone 40 milligrams. So you'll take prednisone 40 milligrams every single day. And then a person wants to know, do I have to taper? Maybe, maybe not. If your doctor's prescription does not include a taper and it's only 7 days, then your doctor is saying you don't need a taper. That's your doctor's choice for your health. And in general, if it's between 10 and 14 days over an entire year that you take prednisone, you may not need to taper. You might be okay without any form of a taper. You might be able to just take, another version is 20 milligrams every day for 7 days or every day for 10 days, and then just stop. That's a thing if your doctor prescribed it. If your doctor did not prescribe it, going cold turkey is a terrible idea. Don't just suddenly stop taking prednisone unless you've got permission from your doctor. The reason is that going cold turkey can actually be a fatal choice. It can make your body go into abrupt adrenal failure. And then you go into this crisis where multiple organs in your body will fail and you can die. You will have low blood pressure, low blood sugar, and your kidneys and your heart, they can't do their job and you die. And so you want to avoid that by tapering off of prednisone. Those are some ways you can taper off of prednisone. There's an infinite variety that your doctor could prescribe, though. If you absolutely need some other options about how to taper prednisone, maybe over a longer time, because after those 7 days you don't feel well and you're like, I actually need to taper over a longer time, then I have a resource for you. It's called my printable prednisone taper chart. You can click the link below to download it now. It has several options, from short-term 5-week tapers to longer term, to even longer term, gentler tapers, so that you can give your body the opportunity to recover at whatever rate is appropriate for you. So just click the link below to download it now, because tapering is not a science. It is an art, because it depends on so many factors that are specific to you, from the drug, the disease, the dose, the duration you've been taking it, and even your DNA. So there's not a real perfect way to predict how to taper. So just click the link below to get the printable taper chart so that you can give yourself the opportunity to get off peacefully and with confidence that you've done all that you need to do to recover from taking prednisone.
A prednisone warrior asked, "Hi, Dr. Megan. Can you tell me what is the best tapering schedule for tapering off of 5 milligrams of prednisone daily for 5 months? I find all sorts of tapering schedules on the internet, but nothing that really addresses just a low maintenance dose taken for this time. Thank you." Okay, so if you're tapering off of 5 milligrams of prednisone, this is where things get really tricky. And there's no great perfect answer that I can give you. Some people could go off of 5 milligrams by 1 milligram a week and be off in 5 weeks, but you're saying specifically for 5 months. And so generally, if you have 5 months to get off of 5 milligrams, that makes it pretty simple. Go off 1 milligram per month. So this month you're on 5 milligrams, and in a month you take 4 milligrams, and the next month you take 3 milligrams, next month 2 milligrams, and the last month 1 milligram, and then month 7 you're at 0, or month 6 you're at 0 milligrams. That would be if everything went well and simple and easy, but that doesn't always happen. So I found a really cool resource I want to share with you. And P.S., I have to clarify before I move on that this is not medical advice. This is just general information. I really don't know. There are so many factors when it comes to tapering. So I wanted to show you this. It's called the Steroid Taper Application. And once you register, and you can go to my schedule and you can create a taper. And it's really cool. So you could, if you have either of these conditions, you can choose one of those specifically designed for it, or you can just go to all conditions and see all the taper types. And they have everything starting at 15 milligrams over 46 weeks, or they'll have over 47 weeks, or over a year. They have all of these plans that are built out, and you don't have to think at all. You just click select this taper plan or download the document. Really cool. I wanted to scroll all the way to the bottom and show you one option. So there's this dead slow and nearly stop that some people need. That might be a great thing you could try with 1 day of the new dose, 6 days of old dose. And that's pretty fun. If you just want a general, just use specific dates to create your own taper, you select this taper plan. And you say, okay, I want to start on October 1st, and then 5 months, October, November, December, January, February. So you want it to end in February, on February 29th. And 5 milligrams is where you said you're starting. Delete all records. Sorry, I had already used this. So it's saying, are you sure you want to change this? So let's skip to October. So you can see every day is 5 milligrams, and you can update the schedule. So in November, you're supposed to go down to 4 milligrams. You can click on a day and change it to 4 and say update the dose. And you can just change everything really simply just to change that. So go back to your schedule. November. Now November shows that 4 milligram dose right there. So you can manually do it, or you can use what they've already created. Pretty cool tool that they have. I did not create it. I don't know anything. I just found it on the internet. So it's pretty fun. And then you can print it off. If you go to my schedule, you can download the schedule, print the schedule. You can even like have this on your phone, like as a shortcut on these FAQs. It shows you how to do that. And then this is a cool tool as well. It can show you the total dose that you're going to be taking. So once you actually put in the exact amount you want to take, then there's it'll calculate how many milligrams of prednisone you've actually taken over time. Very cool. And then if you just want a really simple downloadable taper plan, I have that for you. It's printable, it's free. You don't have to go and create an account and all this stuff. And it is at my website, and that is right here. How to taper prednisone with a free printable taper chart. And so if you can watch all of my videos all about tapering. And then I have little taper plans you could try, including that alternate day strategy I just mentioned a little bit ago. But you just go here to the printable prednisone taper chart, fill out this form, and it'll come in your email inbox, and you'll receive a printable version that you can use with lots of these different strategies on there that you can fill out with the exact days you're taking it and keep track of it.
Are you looking to taper prednisone down from 5 milligrams and you're not sure what to do? Well, I have a printable PDF prednisone taper chart that you can use to taper down from prednisone 5 milligrams. Just click the link below to download it now, and then I'll walk you through how to taper down from prednisone 5 milligrams. If you've been stuck on prednisone 5 milligrams for a while, or if you're newly taking it, I have the tool you need to taper down. Click the link to download it now so that you can taper off prednisone 5 milligrams. So if you go to the charts that are in this PDF, I have several options. So in general, if a doctor prescribes prednisone 5 milligrams, for most people, you can simply stop taking it after your prescription expires. So if your doctor prescribed prednisone 5 milligrams for a week, you can simply stop taking it after that week. You don't generally need to actually taper prednisone 5 milligrams because it's really close to what our body is normally making, which is cortisol at an equivalent dose of about 2.5 milligrams of prednisone. And so you're really close to what your body naturally makes. Often, if it's short-term enough, you can go straight from 5 to 0. But for a lot of people, and probably if you're watching this video, you need something a little more subtle and maybe that takes longer and gives your body more of a chance to recover than just going straight from 5 to 0. That's what this taper chart is for. So let's go to page 5 on the taper chart, where it is a longer term. It says long-term prednisone taper chart. And since we're starting at 5 milligrams, you can go straight to where it says on this document, week 10. Before we dive a little deeper, I want to make sure that you are working closely with your doctor, the person who prescribed your prednisone, to use their advice and communicate closely with them about your experience with prednisone, side effects, tapering, withdrawal, all the things. That what I'm sharing is not medical advice. These are general principles that you can use to talk with your doctor in a more educated way. All right. So if we are on page 5 and we go to taper week 10, it shows milligrams per day, 5 milligrams. And so this chart is assuming that you're doing each milligram dose each week. So in this situation, you're going to need access to 1 milligram tablets. For this first week, you can use 5 milligram tablets, but thereafter, you're going to need access to prednisone 1 milligram tablets. Your doctor's going to need to prescribe that for you. And so you start out by taking 5 milligrams for a week. And then the following week, you drop down to 4 milligrams and you do that for a week. And as you're doing so, be sure to check the box each day. I don't care if you use a check mark or an X or you scribble it out.
make sure you're marking that you did it. Okay. You can even write the day, like the specific calendar date, like August 27th, whatever day it is that you're actually doing it. You could write that on there. Whatever you do, be sure to document it because life gets busy. We all lose track, even as a pharmacist, we all lose track of things like this. Was I at 6 or 5 or 7? I can't remember, right? So just mark it down. I did this, okay? So you go 5 milligrams per week, 4 milligrams per week, 3 milligrams per week, 2 milligrams per week, 1 milligram per week, and then you're off. Yay, hooray, you've tapered off prednisone. And that took you 5 weeks to go down 1 milligram a week for 5 weeks. And then you can stop taking it unless you're dealing with either your disease flaring or you're dealing with withdrawal syndromes. And the prednisone withdrawal syndrome basically feels like you have the flu, but you don't have a runny nose or a cough. That exhausted, achy, miserable feeling. And if any of that is happening to you, you need to go back up to the lowest dose that you didn't have that problem, either your disease coming back or the withdrawal symptoms coming. So if you got down from 5 to 4 to 3, and then you're like, oh, I feel achy again, go back up to 4 and just hold that for longer. So this one is longer term. It's over 5 weeks. But the next one is even slower. Instead of dropping every week 1 milligram, this one we're dropping every 4 weeks, or basically every month. So instead of taking 5 weeks, now we're going to take 5 months to do the same taper. And that might be gentle enough for your body to recover and for your adrenal system to start kicking back into gear, for you to be able to make your own cortisol again. But if that's still too aggressive, we go on to the alternate day strategy. And in this situation, we are using the FDA-approved strategy in the package insert of doing 1 dose one day and another dose another day. In this case, we're going to call 5 milligrams your old dose. And then the next day, you're going to be taking your new dose. So we'll go 5 milligram old dose on day 1, 4 milligram new dose on day 2. Then we go back to 5 milligram old dose on day 3. And then we try again on day 4 with the new dose of 4 milligrams. And you go 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, as long as it takes for you to feel stable, for you to feel that your disease and withdrawal aren't an issue. And then once you feel stable with that, then you can just hold 4 milligrams for a while till you feel stable, and then go 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, and then hold 3 for a while. And then 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and then hold 2, and then 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and hold 1. Theoretically, you can go off at that point, but if you still can't, you can go 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. Those are some ways to draw it out even longer. And if that's still too aggressive, you can do it 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 4. Spread it out even longer. That's what you can do to help you be able to actually get off prednisone 5 milligrams. Remember to download this prednisone taper chart. It's got it all laid out for you, all the options. And when you download it, I'll also send you an email with some fantastic tips and ways to overcome these common hurdles. Learn more about prednisone withdrawal, what it looks like, feels like, and what you can do about it. So be sure to download the prednisone taper chart, and you'll find out all my best tips for tapering off prednisone. Wondering how to taper off prednisone 10 milligrams? Searching for a prednisone taper chart for 10 milligrams as a start? I have exactly what you need today. In fact, I have 2 options for how you can taper off prednisone 10 milligrams. I have a free downloadable printable PDF that you can use as a taper chart or taper schedule. You just click the link below, and then you can either print it off and follow along with me as I explain how to use it, or you can download it and print it off at the end of this video. But I recommend printing it off now so that you have exactly what you need so you can taper off prednisone 10 milligrams. And make sure you stay to the end so you can find out exactly those 2 methods, because everybody's different in their needs for tapering off of prednisone. So without further ado, here's how to taper off prednisone 10 milligrams using a taper chart. So prednisone 10 milligrams is right at that gray zone where you're not quite high, you're not quite low dose, and a lot of people kind of hit a wall and need help, have trouble tapering off.
And so that's what we're going to deal with today. Before I go any further, I've got to clarify that I am not your doctor. This is not medical advice. These are just general principles about prednisone and tapering that you can follow, and that you and your doctor need to work together and be in close communication throughout your taper. These are just some options for how you could taper off prednisone. So if you go to page 5 of my taper chart, it's titled Prednisone Taper Chart, Long-Term 14 Weeks Prednisone Taper Chart. And you don't have to do the full 14 weeks because what I have currently starts at 20 milligrams. You're going to skip straight to the week 5. That's where my taper chart has 10 milligrams. And on here, you will notice that I have week number, and we're going to start on week 5 and we're going to go through to week 14. So 10 weeks. In 10 weeks, you will be done tapering off of prednisone. The next column, I outline exactly how many milligrams per day to take. And then you'll notice that I have a box for each day of the week. That means you're going to take the same milligrams every day for a week, and you're going to mark it on this piece of paper that you did it. You're going to print out this piece of paper and you're going to mark that you did it. Because trust me, even a pharmacist, I lose track. There's so many things to distract us. What milligram am I at again? It's just so much easier if you just keep track. Mark it every day that you're taking it, okay? And then you're going to go to straight to week 5, and you're going to go to, that it says 10 milligrams, and you're going to go Sunday through Saturday, the entire week, take that same dose. The following week, week 6, you're going to drop to 9 milligrams. That means you need to have access to 1 milligram tablets. Those are available in the United States. 1, 2.5, 5, 10, 20, and 40 and 50 are the options for dosing prednisone. And so you're going to need access to 1 milligram tablets so that on week 6, you can take, for example, either 9 1 milligram tablets or a 5 milligram tablet and 4 1 milligram tablets. And you're going to do that every day for that week. And then on week 7, which for you is really week 3, right? You're going to take 8 milligrams every day. So that's 1 5 milligram tablet and 3 1 milligram tablets. And you're going to take that same thing every day for a week. And you're going to continue doing this. The following week, you're at 7 milligrams. The next week, 6 milligrams. The following week, 5 milligrams. Then 4 milligrams per week. 3 milligrams per week. 2 milligrams per week. 1 milligram per week. And then 0. Congratulations, you're off prednisone. You no longer need to take it. That is an option that has been published in scientific literature, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So if you kind of hit a wall somewhere in there, that you get to 10 milligrams or 7 milligrams or wherever it is, and you're hitting a wall and you're like, what do I do now? That's my next taper chart. It helps you break it down a little differently. So actually, I have 3 options for you. The next taper chart slows that taper down. So instead of doing 10 milligrams for a week, you're going to do 10 milligrams for a month. You're going to take 4 times as long to taper. You're going to go 10 milligrams for a month. And then, well, technically I'm doing 4 weeks just so it's easier for writing it down on a calendar. Then the next time you'll do 9 milligrams for a month, 8, 7, 6, so that you're dropping slower, that it's the same milligram drop, but you're giving your body even more time to recover. So instead of a 10-week taper, like the first option I gave you, this second option is a 10-month taper. Some people need that. Some people don't. I suggest starting with that faster taper over a week to see if you can handle it. If you can't, go to this next option. Finally, we have an alternate day strategy. And this is based on the FDA approved option that's in the package insert for prednisone, where they have alternate day strategy. For them isn't necessarily what I'm referring to, but the idea is here that they go from drug to 0 drug, drug to 0 drug. For example, they do 10 milligrams, 0 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 0 milligrams. The idea is it would help the adrenals to recover. And I haven't personally seen a lot of success with this strategy of drug, no drug, drug, no drug. What I have seen a lot greater success with is what I'm about to show you, which is the alternate day strategy of 1 dose and then a tiny bit smaller dose and then old dose and then new dose. So let me just explain a little better. You're stuck at 10 milligrams and we want to get you down to 9 milligrams, but that entire drop is too much for you to do all at once. So we're going to call 10 milligrams the old dose and 9 milligrams the new dose. That's your goal dose that you want to get to. So every other day, you're going to do a different dose. So day 1, you take 10 milligrams, old dose. Day 2, you take 9 milligrams, new dose. Day 3, you take 10 milligrams, old dose. Day 4, 9 milligrams, new dose. Old, new, old, new. And you do that until you're feeling okay. And then you hold that new dose all by itself for a long time, as long as you need. A week, a month, whatever it is. So you went 10, 9, 10, 9, 10, 9. Now you just do 9. You just hold that 9 until you're fully stable. Then 9 milligrams becomes your old dose. So you do 9, 8, 9, 8, 9, 8, and hold 8 as long as you need to. And once you feel ready, you go from 8 to 7, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7. And then you hold 7. And if that's still too much, you can do it every few days. So instead of every other day, it's 8, 8, 7, 8, 8, 7, and then 8, 7, 8, right? Like you can spread it even further out. So those are some options. And I've got this super easy to use printable for what you can do. And you got to be listening to your body. When you download this prednisone taper chart, it comes with a bunch of videos of how to use it and things to look out for, because there are definitely some roadblocks people hit. So make sure you download this prednisone taper chart. You can print it off for yourself and get my best tips for how to deal with the roadblocks many people face while tapering prednisone. Looking to taper off prednisone 20 milligrams, looking for a prednisone 20 milligram taper chart or taper schedule that you can use? Well, I have exactly what you need. I have a downloadable, printable PDF taper chart for prednisone 20 milligrams. You can use it in connection with your doctor to figure out how to taper off prednisone 20 milligrams. I'm Dr. Megan, the prednisone pharmacist, and I've developed this based on science and art, because there is no perfect way to taper off of prednisone. And so if you would like access to this taper chart, just click the link below, print it off, and use it to follow along as we discuss the best strategies for tapering off of prednisone. And make sure you stay to the end, because there are some really important roadblocks that people hit, and you need to know how to overcome those. So without further ado, here is Dr. Megan's prednisone taper chart. Print it off and follow along. So we've got several options here on my taper chart. There's a more aggressive taper, and there are less aggressive tapers. And then there's a final one that has a really cool strategy at the end that I'll share. So in general, we need to keep tapers between 10 to 20% milligrams drop at a time. So it's not necessarily the number of milligrams that we drop, it's the percentage of the dose that we're dropping. And so the most aggressive taper is to go from 20 to 10 to 5 and off. And each of those times is a 50% drop. And each of those drops are normally over several days to several weeks. So that might be 20 milligrams for like 3 to 5 days, then 10 milligrams for 3 to 5 days, then 5 milligrams for 3 to 5 days and off. That's often a short-term taper that a doctor might do. But a lot of people can't handle it and need it to be closer to a 10 to 20% drop. And so if that's not right for you, let's move on to the longer term prednisone taper chart. And if you're using my taper chart, just go to whatever milligram that you are at and start there. And then you can work through the taper chart from there. So on page 5 of the taper chart, the long-term prednisone 14 weeks taper chart, we start right at the top on taper week 1, where it says we take 20 milligrams per day. And you'll see that there are boxes for the rest of the days of the week. So in this taper chart, you take the same dose for an entire week, and then you drop to the next dose. So on taper week 1, we take 20 milligrams on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And really important tip is to mark it off. Check that box when you actually took the dose. Because even as a pharmacist, I get confused, I forget, life is busy, and was I on 17.5 or 15? I can't remember the last dose I took. Write it down so you don't have to second guess yourself. You know exactly what dose you're on, okay? So you mark it off. I did 20 milligrams for a week. The next week, you take 17.5 milligrams for a week. Now you could do this either with a 20 milligram tablet and cutting it really small, or a 10 milligram tablet. And at this point, you could cut it into 4 pieces. And for week 2, you'd take one full 10 milligram tablet,
a half of a 10 milligram tablet and a fourth of a 10 milligram tablet. And that would be one way to get there. It'd be a lot easier, though, if you had access to 5 milligram or 2.5 milligram tablets at this point. So that on week 2, you could, for example, take one 10 milligram, one 5 milligram, and one 2.5 milligram, or a lot of 2.5 milligram tablets, right? Those are ways you can get there. Prednisone also comes in 1 milligram tablets, which are going to come in handy once we get down to week 6. So you're going to drop again the next week on week 3 to 15 milligrams on week 4. You're going to do 12.5 milligrams all week. Week 5, 10 milligrams all week. And then we get to week 6. And this is where you've got to have access to 1 milligram tablets. And so you do 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, each of those for a full week. Mark it off. Congratulations. You can go down to 0. You're done with prednisone. You have graduated from prednisone. And if you're feeling good, you can just stop. But what are some things to look out for that maybe you need to slow down? So if your disease is coming back, for me, if my autoimmune condition started flaring, for people with rheumatoid arthritis, if their joint pain suddenly starts hurting, for people with asthma, if they suddenly can't breathe, whatever you're taking it for, if that's flaring, then you can't do that. You got to go back to the lowest effective dose that was keeping your disease stable. Okay. And then the other thing to look out for is prednisone withdrawals. And that's when you just feel awful, if you feel hollow inside, you might even feel like you're getting the flu, but you don't have respiratory symptoms. You don't have a cold or a cough. You just feel that yucky, achy, miserable feeling, low energy, bone aches, muscle aches, joint pain. That might be withdrawal syndrome, and that means you're tapering too fast. So go back up to wherever you were last at that you didn't have that problem. And then start out with an even slower taper. That brings us to page 6. This slower taper, instead of dropping every week, we're now dropping every 4 weeks, which is basically every month. And so it's 4 times as long. It's giving your body a chance to recover for even longer. And it's a lot gentler on your body. So that's another option, is using this longer term taper chart that instead of being over 14 weeks, it's over 14 months. And that's a legitimate thing. But what if you're getting stuck somewhere, right? Say you got down to 8 milligrams. What do you do now? Like you just hit this wall. I call it the taper trap. Whether your disease is flaring or in prednisone withdrawal and you don't know what to do. And when you drop to 7, you feel awful again and you feel stuck. It's this trap. Well, that's where the alternate day strategy comes in. This is based on the FDA approved package insert that comes on the back of the bottle in the pharmacy, where they said maybe to preserve adrenal function, we can do taking a drug on one day and then no drug on the next day, and drug, no drug, drug, no drug. A lot of people struggle with that, and it's just too much up and down roller coaster for them. And so that same strategy, though, we can use. Instead of doing drug, no drug, we do drug, slightly smaller drug, drug, slightly smaller drug. So let me explain. If you got stuck at 8 milligrams, then instead of staying at 7 milligrams for a whole week, right after that, you go every other day, alternate day strategy. You do 8 milligrams, which we're going to call old drug, and then you have 7 milligrams, which we're going to call new drug. You go 8 milligrams old drug on day 1. Day 2, 7 milligrams, new drug. Day 3, 8 milligrams, old drug. Day 4, 7 milligrams, new drug. Day 5, 8 milligrams, old drug. Day 6, 7 milligrams, new drug. And so on. You're alternating it until you're feeling okay. You're not having horrible withdrawals. Your disease isn't flaring. And then once you get to that point, then you can just hold it at that 7 milligrams as long as you need to until you're feeling stable. And then once you're really ready to go, and your whole health situation, you're feeling good, then drop from 7 to 6. So now that you're stable on 7 milligrams, it becomes your old dose. 7's your old dose, and now 6 is your new dose. And you keep doing that, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, as long as you need to, for a week or a month, however long it takes. And then 6 milligrams becomes your new dose, and you hold that. And then you go 6, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5. And an even more advanced technique, if that's even too much for you, is you could do every few days. So you could do 8, 8, 7, 8, 8, 7, or 8, 8, 7, 8, 8, 8, 7. Just
really gentle, really slow. This is a years-long technique. This is not a few weeks or a few days or a few months. This will take a long time, but it's worth it, right? Because prednisone causes more side effects than any other drug. It causes permanent damage to your eyes, to your heart, to your bones, to your skin, and on and on. And they're horrible. And so you want to do whatever you can to get to the lowest effective dose for you. Because when you get to that point, whatever that dose is for you, you know that you're getting the benefit of treatment, and you're also minimizing the risk of all those excessive milligrams of prednisone that are causing damage. So do whatever you can to find that lowest effective dose for you and work with your doctor to find what that is. And then click the link below to download my prednisone taper chart if you haven't already. That has even more tips of how you can have the best life possible while tapering, ways to minimize the side effects so that you have the most successful taper possible. Download my prednisone taper chart now to know exactly what to do to taper prednisone successfully.
Prednisone 50 milligrams. Is that what your doctor prescribed for you? Hi, I'm Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist. I'm here to talk to you all about prednisone 50 milligrams and what you can expect, what it's used for, how to taper if you need to, and common side effects you might experience. At the end, I'll share a special gift. So first of all, prednisone 50 milligrams. Is this a high dose or a low dose? So prednisone 50 milligrams is commercially available. It's a tablet size that you can actually buy in a pharmacy, but it's not very common. Prednisone 50 milligram is the least commonly prescribed strength of prednisone. More common is prednisone 10 milligrams, and then prednisone 20 milligrams, and then prednisone 5 milligrams. Those are the most commonly prescribed strengths. It's also available as 2.5 and 1 milligrams. So does prednisone 50 milligrams sound like a high or low dose? Yes, it is a high dose. And if your doctor prescribed prednisone 50 milligrams, do you have to take the 50 milligram tablets? No. Your doctor could prescribe 20 milligram tablets, and you could take 2.5 tablets per day. Yes, you can split them in half. And so 2.5 of the 20 milligram tablets is 20 plus 20 plus 10 equals 50 milligram tablets that you can take. And then your doctor could also prescribe prednisone 10 milligram tablets. So you would take 5 of the 10 milligram tablets in the day. And when would you take them? Should you take 10 in the morning and then 10 at lunch and then spread them out? No, you should not spread them out throughout the day. Generally, for most people, most doctors want you to take all of your prednisone dose first thing in the morning. So that's sometime between 6 and 8 a.m. And that's because prednisone is mimicking your body's naturally occurring hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is what helps you wake up in the morning. And so you'd want to mimic that natural hormone being released first thing in the morning. So you'd take all 5 of the 10 milligram tablets or the entire 50 milligram tablet all at once, first thing in the morning. And you can take it with a glass of water or with your coffee. You can take it pretty much with anything. Some people think that it's important to take it with food. The evidence there's a little sketchy, but if you've had issues with stomach upset in the past, GERD or ulcers, then definitely take it with food, but you don't have to take it with food if you haven't had stomach problems in the past. So that's how to take prednisone 50 milligram tablets. Next, do you need to taper prednisone 50 milligrams? So often prednisone 50 milligrams is given as a 5-day supply. So your doctor would give you 50 milligrams on day 1, 50 milligrams on day 2, 50 milligrams on day 3, 50 milligrams on day 4, and 50 milligrams on day 5, and you're done. And often that is just fine. For many people, you do not have to taper that. You simply just take it exactly as your doctor prescribed it. And then on day 6, you take 0 milligrams of prednisone and you move on with your life. And for a lot of people, that works out just fine. There is a small minority of people that doesn't work out, that having that much steroid, because 50 milligrams is a humongous dose compared to what your body normally secretes, which is 2.5 milligrams equivalent per day. And so that's 20 times bigger. So if you are feeling exhausted, like you can't get out of bed, your muscles are weak, maybe you feel like you're getting the flu or something, after you stop taking the prednisone, then you may need to taper. And so definitely talk to your doctor, stay in touch with them, let them know how you're feeling. You might be in prednisone withdrawal. Most people are just fine and don't need to taper when between 10 to 14 days or less of prednisone. But when you go beyond 10 to 14 days, you definitely need to taper. So that answered whether or not you need to taper. Most people don't. Next, what is prednisone 50 milligrams used for? Prednisone 50 milligrams is used for conditions where there's a lot of inflammation or other issues that need to be dealt with immediately. I personally had to take prednisone 60 milligrams for my condition because I was almost going to bleed to death. We had to stop my immune system from attacking my body's platelets. So it made sense for me to take a really high dose. It needed to save my life so I didn't die. So if what you're taking it for is life-threatening, definitely it makes sense to take such a high dose. The thing about prednisone is it can be used for almost any condition where there's inflammation or immune system problems. And so I'm going to give you a list of conditions that it's commonly used for at this dose, but your doctor can literally prescribe it for almost anything. So pneumonia, if you get a severe case of pneumonia, asthma, a really bad asthma exacerbation, a gout attack, giant cell arteritis, immune thrombocytopenia. That's what I took it for. Bronchitis. Now that one's a little sketchy, maybe it doesn't help. And any other really severe inflammatory condition, it could be used for that. There are other conditions where it's weight-based dosing. And so the larger a person you are, the higher the dose they need to give you. And so maybe for a child, they wouldn't need 50 milligrams or more, but as an adult, you do. So that's another possibility of what prednisone 50 milligrams could be used for. If I haven't listed your condition and you'd like to share, feel free to comment below what you are using prednisone 50 milligrams for. Next, what are prednisone 50 milligrams side effects? So I'm going to give you a list of all of the side effects, but if you're only taking prednisone 5 milligrams for 5 days, most of these are not likely in only 5 days. So another caveat I want to give before I give you this list is there is no complete perfect list. Prednisone is a really old drug and no drug company actually ever did testing. So the information I'm sharing with you is based on observation, not by testing in clinical trials that are controlled by an expensive test that a drug company did. So these are the most commonly associated with high doses of prednisone, like prednisone 50 milligrams. First of all, it's fluid retention. Your body is retaining, holding on to liquid water because prednisone is mimicking the hormone that your body uses to decide how much water to hold. And when you're using such a high dose, sometimes you can get swelling. You might get swelling in your knees or your feet or your face or even your hands. Swelling is a possibility. I personally got swelling in my knees and also swelling in my face. But was that swelling in my face water or was it fat redistribution? That's the next thing, is prednisone causes fat redistribution. The higher the dose and the longer time you take prednisone, the more likely you are to have the fat redistribution. And that is really flattering. It's called moon face, when your face becomes round like the moon, and that's the fat redistribution. You can also get fat deposits on the back of your neck, and the most flattering one that we all love is on your belly. You can get fat deposited on your belly, making even a man look pregnant. So it's not fun having to take prednisone high doses like this. I definitely understand. I had moon face, the belly, all the things. I did not get the neck thing though, the buffalo hump. So we did fluid retention and then the fat redistribution. Next is hypertension or high blood pressure. This is related to that fluid retention because there's more liquid for your blood to have to pump. Your heart has to pump harder, and that makes your blood pressure higher. And so if you didn't need blood pressure medications before, maybe while you're on prednisone, you will need it. And then the next side effect is related to this, and that's cardiovascular complications. So your heart is beating harder. So you can get heart beating issues. They're called arrhythmias or irregular heartbeats. You can have something as similar as just skipping a few beats to getting full-blown arrhythmias that can be fatal. That is incredibly rare, but a possibility. And anything in between, a heart attack, stroke, those are all possibilities while on high doses of prednisone. Next is high blood sugar or hyperglycemia. Prednisone is in a class of drugs called glucocorticoids. Gluco meaning glucose or sugar. It's changing the way your body metabolizes sugar. And so you hold on to more sugar than you normally would. Your body releases more sugar into your bloodstream than it normally would. And so you get high blood sugar. And this makes perfect sense if we look at your evolution, and the reason your body would normally be secreting high levels of cortisol, which is what prednisone is mimicking, is so that you can survive a terrible situation, whether it's a famine or war or a tiger chasing you. It's to help you survive. And if you were in that situation, you would need the sugar to run away from the tiger to survive the famine. And so we're really grateful to Mother Nature for doing this for us, unless we're taking high doses of prednisone for a non-famine reason, right? And so you need to be really careful about your blood sugars while you're taking prednisone to not eat foods high in sugars. Next, you can get brain fog and other dementias or anything that makes you feel like, I just am not quite here. Like there's just I don't feel like myself right now. And it can be even more than that. You can get psychiatric disturbances. You can get psychosis and depression. Severe depression is possible while on high doses of prednisone. The higher the dose, the more likely psychosis and depression are. But not everybody gets all of these. And certainly not everybody gets all of the psychotic and mood changes. But you might get a great mood change. You might get really excited and have more energy than you normally would. Some people describe it as feeling 30 years younger and don't need to sleep. And it's a wonderful feeling until it lasts for a long time. And then the insomnia kicks in and you're not able to sleep at night. And so prednisone is a double-edged sword. It's saving our lives and it's causing these side effects. If you are suffering these side effects or you want to know how to prevent these side effects, I created a prednisone checklist. It includes the top side effects and what you can do about them, plus my top tips for how to counteract side effects. If you'd like to get access to this free download, just click the link below, put in your email address, and download it today.
Hi, thank you for taking the time. I have MG for years now. I'm currently on 40 milligram one day and 5 the next day. I had to take 40 milligrams every day, now tapering off slowly. Is it necessary to taper off? Yes. If you've had it for years and you've had to take it every day, you definitely need to taper off. But this is a good question for your doctor. Some doctors will prescribe 40 milligrams every day for a week or 10 days and then not taper you. And that's a thing. That is a legitimate thing. If you were normally on 5 milligrams and then suddenly jump up to 40, you're wondering, can you just kind of jump to 5? Is that kind of what you're asking? Because generally, once you bump up, then you need to taper off again. You can't just jump back down to 5. Once you've increased it that much, you have to slowly go off again. Maybe it's a more aggressive taper than you normally would have, like 40, 30, 20, 10, get you back down to 5. And instead of over weeks, that might be days, but it's really, you definitely got to talk to your doctor about that. But generally, if you've taken more than 10 days of prednisone in a year, you need a taper. you just got to taper. So definitely work with your doctor to find out. Wondering how to taper prednisone for PMR? I'm Dr. Megan, the prednisone pharmacist, and I got lots of questions from people wondering how to taper off prednisone if you're taking it for polymyalgia rheumatica. Now, this is specific for this disease, but a lot of what I'm going to say is applicable to anyone taking prednisone for any disease because it's the principles of the drug itself. But there are a few nuances about PMR specifically that I wanted to touch on because there are so many people on prednisone for PMR for so long. So you have unique challenges that I want to help you overcome right now. And I've had several prednisone warriors reach out and tell me their story. So I want to incorporate some of their stories as well. I did a long interview with a woman named Diane who has PMR, and her story is really helpful. And another woman responded to that with some tips for maybe what Diane could have done differently. So I wanted to share that. So generally, PMR, polymyalgia rheumatica, is a condition of inflammation and pain in the shoulder and pelvic girdle area. Other joints can be affected, but those are the main places, leading to an inability to lift a cup to your mouth, latch your own bra, all sorts of miserable consequences from incredible shoulder pain. And it usually happens to women over the age of 50 of Northern European descent. That's the stereotypical person, although it can happen in men and it can happen in other populations, but the most common are basically white women. So you might first wonder, okay, I've got this diagnosis of PMR. How long am I going to be on this? It's just a month, right? No, unfortunately. That's what I thought for my condition too. I thought, oh, it'll just be like 10 days and then I'll be off. No, it was 9 months for me. For my condition, which is not PMR, mine's called ITP. But for PMR, they've done several studies, and this is one of them. It says the mean duration of steroid treatment for all patients was 30 months, with a range of 13 to 108 months. So that could be about a year if you're lucky, or it sounds like one of those was on it for almost 10 years. Every person's different. They said the higher the ESR and CRP on diagnosis, those are blood tests that show inflammation. ESR stands for erythrocyte sedimentation rate, and CRP stands for C-reactive protein. The higher those were, generally in this study, the longer the duration of prednisone treatment. So that's a really interesting association to see that basically the more inflammation you have, the longer you're going to need an anti-inflammatory medication like prednisone. It makes sense. And so with that, about how many people? So I saw one study that showed about half of people, this is a different study, half of people are on prednisone for a year. Another half of those are on prednisone for 2 years, and another half of those are on prednisone for 3 or more. So basically it's a half-life of 1 year, if you know how half-lives work. But the prednisone itself has a half-life of 2 hours. So this is really helpful to know that this is a very long-term plan. Your next question might be, when is prednisone going to kick in? And one study showed a woman responded after 12 hours of treatment. Other people have said 2 to 4 days. Another have said within 2 weeks, you should definitely have a response. And if you're still having pain after that long, maybe the dose isn't enough. What dose would you normally take? Somewhere between 15 and 25 is what the guidelines say is where the doctor should start your dose. But everybody's unique and everybody has a dose that is going to work for them. And your goal is to find whatever that dose is that is the lowest effective dose. So you could start out at 25, but then you'd want to drop until you get to a point where maybe the pain's coming back. And then you go back up to wherever that dose is not causing pain for you. So it's somewhere between 15 and 25 for some people who have other inflammatory complications. Like, for example, if you have giant cell arteritis overlaid with it, giant cell arteritis acronym is GCA, and there's a higher percentage of people who have GCA and PMR. They're correlated.
Sometimes PMR can lead to GCA, sometimes GCA can lead to PMR. There's an overlap in the type of person who gets these diseases. And so if you originally come in for PMR and you actually might have underlying GCA that isn't treated, maybe you actually need a higher dose to overcome that more inflammatory condition. And just what GCA is, it's inflammation of the arteries, typically the arteries here, and it's called temporal arteritis. And it's painful, can lead to headaches, vision loss. And so doctors are very aggressive in treating it with pretty high doses, usually somewhere between 40 and 60 milligrams for that disease. So if you're not getting pain relief from your PMR, maybe you need to go up in a dose. And always, everything I'm telling you is working with your doctor closely. I do not replace your doctor. You definitely need to be in close communication with either your rheumatologist, if that's the person treating you, or your primary care doctor. And while we're talking about doctors, it's really important that you get the accurate diagnosis. PMR is kind of a diagnosis of exclusion, making sure it's not other things first. You wouldn't jump straight to a diagnosis of PMR without a blood test, without ruling out rheumatoid arthritis and several other things. So you'd want to make sure that if you're in any doubt whether this is your diagnosis, like if the prednisone isn't working, then get a second opinion. Like, do not hesitate to get a second opinion, because if it truly is PMR, typically prednisone works miraculously. Like, you're in agonizing pain, and then suddenly the prednisone kicks in and you have relief. You're able to function again. You have energy. You have enthusiasm for life at first. So definitely get a second opinion if this isn't working for you. Okay, so now at this point, you have found the dose that is working for you, the lowest effective dose that is helping. You're getting the pain relief. And the reason we want it to be the lowest effective dose is because prednisone comes with lots of side effects. I'm talking more than any other drug. A professor at Harvard, where I learned about PMR and GCA and other forms of vasculitis, he said that prednisone and other steroids are the best drugs in rheumatology because they work so miraculously. And they're the worst drugs in rheumatology because they're so horrific in the side effects that there's nobody who wants a person off prednisone more than their doctor, aside from the patient itself, because the patients, we are the ones experiencing the horrific side effects. And the doctor knows that there are so many terrible possible consequences. So what are these consequences the doctors are worried about? Well, it's anything from head to toe. Check out this image of my side effects. It can be anything from mood changes like anxiety, psychosis, depression, to heart disease, stroke, heart attack, arrhythmias, bone issues, whether it's bone loss, osteoporosis, or osteonecrosis, bone death, diabetes, high blood sugar, weight gain, all sorts of metabolic complications, insomnia, and on and on. So many possible changes that you definitely want to minimize by getting on the lowest effective dose for you. You don't want to go below that, otherwise your disease flares and the inflammation gets worse. You want to find precisely where your disease is under control and you're minimizing your risk for these side effects. So now that you've figured out what that lowest effective dose is for you, what is the plan from here? Well, working with your doctor, you could do some of the following things. You would want to find a way that the drug is working at the best time of day for you. So typically PMR has the worst pain in the shoulders upon waking. And so you'd basically want to figure out a way that the drug works when you're waking up. And there are several strategies of how to do that. You could take prednisone like most people do with other diseases first thing in the morning to mimic cortisol. That is what most people do for other diseases, but not necessarily for PMR. Because PMR has that early morning pain, some people change the way it's dosed. And instead of taking it first thing in the morning only, they may also take a bedtime or a middle of the night dose. So let me read the story that I alluded to earlier. This was the response of how this woman had figured out how to get to the lowest effective dose using an interesting dosing timing. So I'm going to just read her story. I suffered for many weeks with my husband helping me to get out of bed before a very astute physician knew exactly what it was. Started at 10 milligrams of prednisone, then was up to 15 milligrams 2 weeks later, and that controlled my pain. During those 2 weeks, I tried various dosing times. Initially at breakfast as recommended, but the pain started returning by bedtime. And then the breakfast dose took a while to give some relief. The typical dosing with prednisone does not take into account the morning pain with PMR. Dosing at night helped me to go to bed without pain, so it didn't build up overnight and completely stopped the morning pain, but I didn't sleep. After doing a lot of online research of medical reports, I found several studies and articles talking about their circadian rhythm, suggested dosing in the middle of the night for PMR specifically because of the morning pain. And she's quoting a study now. The body normally produces cortisol between 2 and 3 a.m., which can then counter the cytokines that are produced between 4 and 4:30 a.m. One study compared the dosing at 2 a.m. versus 6:30 a.m. and found there was much less morning pain with the 2 a.m. dose. And another study, not in PMR, but in rheumatoid arthritis, showed that administration of low doses of prednisolone, 5 or 7.5 milligrams daily at 2 a.m. had favorable effects on the duration of morning stiffness, joint pain, and morning serum concentrations of IL-6. That's an inflammatory marker. She continues, that worked well, but I would start again with some shoulder pain at supper time because the early morning dose had worn off. Doing a split dose, as suggested in a PMR forum, was my answer. 10 milligrams at 2 a.m. and 5 milligrams at 6 p.m. I could sleep well until my dose, had a tolerable amount of sleep disturbance after that, and awakened with no pain. After 1 month at 15 milligrams and finally seeing a rheumatologist, he started my tapering by 2.5 milligrams every 2 weeks until I hit 10 milligrams, then by 1 milligram monthly. I gradually reduced both splits until I was down to 8 milligrams in a single dose at 2 a.m. Even 2:30 or 3 a.m. was okay, giving me better sleep for a bit longer each night. Like Diane, I found I had to listen to my body. I needed to go down very gradually by 0.5 milligrams the first week of each month, then could finish the month at the desired target dose. This last taper to 6 milligrams was further complicated by the time change, but I have been okay now finishing the month. Each month now will be a new experience. I loved this story because it showed a lot of principles of PMR, tapering, and dosing. So she talked about the split dosing that I mentioned that it's got a 2-hour half-life. So it's basically completely gone after 12 hours. So if she's taking it at 2 a.m., by the evening, it's pretty much gone. And so she needed just a little bit more. I'm not saying you need to follow her strategy, but she did say you need to listen to your own body. And I fully agree with that. Every single person with PMR is different in how long they're going to be on it and what dose works for them and their inflammation and pain. I also appreciated how she described her relationship with her rheumatologist. She finally got to see them because rheumatologists are often booked out really far in advance. And the way that rheumatologist tapered the prednisone was exactly what is recommended, not only by the Harvard professors that I learned from, but also by the guidelines written by the European League Against Rheumatism and the American College of Rheumatology. And that is that before 10 milligrams, you can taper by about 2.5 milligrams a week. So for example, if you were to start at 15 milligrams, the next time you drop, you could drop to 12.5 milligrams. And potentially the next time you could drop to 10 milligrams. But at that point, you do not continue dropping by 2.5 milligrams. That is way too much of a dose drop. And that is because the drop is more important that we consider the percentage drop instead of the actual milligram drop. When you're dropping from 12 to 10, that's about, 2 milligrams is about somewhere between 10 to 20%. And that's the goal we want to go for. But when you drop from that, the same 12.5 to 10 is 2.5 milligram drop. And then if you were to go from 10 to 7.5, that 2.5 milligram drop is actually 25%. That's actually twice, like a humongous drop. percentage-wise. You want to keep it lower, between 10 to 20% when you're dropping, especially with PMR. She was mentioning she was only being able to drop by a half of a milligram, so 0.5. And that's pretty common as well. So some people can tolerate a drop from 10 to 9, 9 to 8, 8 to 7, and so on with PMR. Others have to drop by a half a milligram at a time. And each of those drops is over a month. And there are several ways we can do that. So let's talk about ways to drop. So you could just drop straight from 10 to 9, and just one day you were taking 10, and the next day and thereafter you take 9 milligrams. Some people can tolerate that. Other people have to be a little bit more nuanced. And that's where every other day dosing comes in, or every few days. So that's where you might go from 10 on day 1 to 9 on day 2, 10 on day 3, 9 on day 4, 10 on day 5, whatever number we're at. But every other day, you're going back and forth from old dose to new dose, old dose, new dose, old dose, new dose. And you just do that for as long as needed until you're tolerating that drop. Because essentially when you're doing it like that, that's basically a half a milligram a day, right? When you average it over 48 hours, you're only dropping a half a milligram. So that's a possibility. Other people have to extend that even further. Instead of every other day, it's every few days. So it would be old dose, new dose, old dose, old dose, old dose, new dose, old dose, old dose. It would be like every 3 days or something. And then you can make it even smaller and smaller as time goes on, the timing between it. There's an amazing resource that has many different tapering schedules on it, strategies that have been mentioned in guidelines and in support groups. And I'll have a link to that in the notes for this video, of this taper resource that you can just plug in what dose you're on, and it can spit out a schedule for you using one of the built-in taper plans that others have put into their system. So that's another strategy if this is a little bit too complicated for you. And then in order to be dropping by, from 10 to 9, you do need access to 5 milligram tablets, or 2.5 milligram tablets, or 1 milligram tablets. Essentially, you really have to have access to 1 milligram tablets. And can you split these in half? Yes. So you could technically take 9.5 tablets if you wanted. You would take like a 5 milligram tablet, and then 4 1 milligram tablets, and then a half 1 milligram tablet. You could do that. That's a possibility. Or you can do that alternate day dosing. Working with your doctor and listening to your body are the really most important keys here. And I am available for consultations if you absolutely need it and you've exhausted all the resources you already have. I'll have a link below to that as well. I can consult on what you can discuss with your doctor. So in addition, I have a free prednisone taper chart. And I have that extended taper that's over a year that you can refer to as a possibility for how to taper prednisone. It's got short-term tapers, longer-term tapers, and the longest-term taper. And it includes that every other day dosing. So you know exactly what to do. You can just, mark things off as you get them done every dose that you take. It's free, it's printable. Just click the link below to download that now. And how do you know if it's your disease flaring, or you're sick, or you're in prednisone withdrawal? And that's a super tricky question. And I asked it to the professors at Harvard, and they didn't really have a great answer. But crowdsourcing it, I got some answers. And I think what one person suggested, and it's, do I watch CRP levels, watch pain levels? I think the combination of listening to your body, watching your pain levels, and potentially getting blood draws to see if your inflammatory markers are going up, your CRP or your ESR. And if they are, then clearly that's your disease flaring and you're not going into withdrawal. But if you're just feeling yucky and you're not getting that pain and it's just a blah feeling, low energy, that's probably more likely withdrawal. The treatment for either of them is the same. Go back to the lowest effective dose where you weren't feeling yucky, where you weren't having pain. And then start again to taper at a much slower rate after totally stabilizing. Never try dropping a dose if your pain isn't totally under control. There's no point in trying to fight it. You're not going to win. The inflammation is too dramatic to try to push it. And so if tapering that long sounds horrendous to you, and being on prednisone sounds horrific to you for that many years, luckily, in the last few years, they've recently come out with some alternative medications to prednisone, or, supportive medications, what they call steroid sparing, allowing you to get on a lower dose of prednisone. And these include Actemra, which generic name is tocilizumab, and Kevzara. And there are a few more under investigation that may help. I've made other videos all about these, so you should check those out. But essentially, talk to your doctor about getting on these biologic injectable medications if prednisone is so intolerable to you. Because for me, it was intolerable. And for many people, it is definitely intolerable. One study of giant cell arteritis showed that the lowest effective dose on average was 9 milligrams. But the dose where the side effects were tolerable was 5 milligrams. There was literally no golden dose where the benefits outweighed the risks. It just fails so often. It doesn't actually keep people out of remission with giant cell arteritis. And so finding that balance is a really tricky question and may be impossible to find. And so luckily we have these injectable biologics that can help some people, not everybody, but at least for most people, they allow you to get on a lower dose of prednisone. So talk to your doctor about that. And again, if you need help tapering prednisone, click the link below to download my prednisone taper chart.
Congratulations. You've just learned how to safely taper prednisone. But as you may already know, tapering doesn't always go as smoothly as we'd like. One of the biggest challenges people face while tapering is called prednisone withdrawal. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether the symptoms you're experiencing are the disease itself, your condition returning, side effects from prednisone, or withdrawal symptoms. If you've ever felt stuck wondering, what is happening to me? You're not alone. That's why I created my prednisone withdrawal marathon, a comprehensive guide to help you recognize whether the signs you're experiencing are withdrawal or something else. And you'll discover the best strategies for dealing with it. In that episode, you'll learn the most common and surprising withdrawal symptoms, how to tell the difference between withdrawal and a flare-up of your condition, and practical strategies and tools to help you feel better faster. So if you're tapering prednisone and want to feel confident about what's happening in your body, I highly recommend checking out the Withdrawal Marathon next. You can find it on my channel, linked below, or click somewhere on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me today. Be sure to watch that Withdrawal Marathon next. Signing off as Dr. Megan, your prednisone pharmacist.